Act 1 of Christopher Jr. by Madeleine Lucette Ryley. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Characters:
Christopher Jedbury Sr., an East India merchant. Read by Alan Mapstone.
Mrs. Jedbury, read by Kelly Taylor.
Christopher Jedbury Jr., their son, read by Thomas Peter.
Nellie, their daughter, read by Krista Zaleski.
Whimper, read by James Hedrick.
Job, valet to Jedbury Jr., read by Greg Giordano.
Major Headway, a retired soldier, read by Adrian Stevens.
Dora, his niece, read by Jen Broda.
Mr. Glib, President of the Association for Suppression of Juvenile Gambling, read by Todd.
Mrs. Glib, his better half, read by Wendy Katz-Hiller.
Tom Bellaby, read by T.J. Burns.
Mr. Simpson, manager of the Bombay House, read by Anthony Joseph.
Stage directions, read by T.R. Love. Christopher Jr., Act 1, Scene, Jedbury Jr.'s apartments. A very shabby attic room, bedroom, communicating right, and a door to stairs left. Window with ragged curtains, center back. A balcony outside, leading to fire escape. A shabby sofa right, rickety table left, a few chairs, sideboard left back, cups, saucers, and teapot on the sideboard. Also a sugar bowl, poker chips, and playing cards. A wooden shelf with brackets, nails, hammer, etc. on the floor near door right. Broken plaster in ceiling over table left. At rise of curtain, Job enters door left. He carries a large pile of books, then drops them on floor near where shelf is lying. He then returns to door left and brings in a large assortment of boots and shoes. These he carries across room until he stands before open door right, when he throws boots in one by one. He returns again to door left and fetches bundle of photographs and several pipes, which he carries to mantel over fireplace right. He arranges photos and pipes on mantel. Knock at door left. Job without turning.
Not at home.
Enter Bellaby.
The deuce you're not.
Crosses front of table to center. Job turning.
Oh, it's you, sir. I beg pardon, but them's the orders.
Bellaby looking round.
What are you doing here?
We're moving, sir.
Moving? Why? What's up?
We are, sir. Can't get no higher unless we go on the tiles.
Where's Mr. Jedbury?
Just stepped out. He won't be long, sir.
And what has induced him to exchange his flat on the second floor for this garret?
Job still arranging photos.
Can't say exactly, sir.
Going.
Excuse me. We ain't all up yet.
All right, Job. Don't mind me. I'll wait for a few minutes.
Puts down hat and walks to mantel.
Take a seat, sir.
Job exits left.
I wonder what Chris's little game is.
Takes up photo, reads.
Christopher Jedbury Jr. as Charles Surface.
Takes another.
As John Mildmay.
Puts down photos.
So, he still dabbles in amateur theatricals.
Enter Nellie Jedbury left. Not seeing who it is.
I beg your pardon?
Bellaby turns round.
Good gracious, why, it's Nellie.
Goes to her.
I beg your pardon, Miss Jedbury.
Nellie extending her hand.
What? Tom? Mr. Bellaby, I am so glad to have met you. They told me downstairs that Christopher wasn't at home. They almost refused to let me wait.
Looks round in dismay.
Oh!
What's the matter?
Nellie, going up left.
We must have made a mistake. Chris would never live in this room.
Bellaby, aside.
What am I to say? Poor little girl. And she's grown so pretty, too.
Aloud.
I expect it's on account of the air.
Nellie comes down.
The higher you go, the purer it gets, you know. And Chris was always a deuce of a fellow for air.
Looks at ceiling.
He lives on it. No, I don't mean that.
Nellie coming down.
Poor Chris. What can have happened? I haven't seen him for 2 years. I've only just arrived from school in Paris. Whymper, our manservant, met me at the station with a message that I was to wait for Papa and Mama here.
Goes up left. Bellaby, aside, down right.
Christopher's father coming to town? Huh. Now I see through it all. This pauper and attic business is got up especially for the old man's benefit.
Aloud to Nellie, who ruefully examines the shabby furniture.
I wouldn't let the sight of this place distress me if I were you. We bachelors don't go in for frivolous embellishments. Solid comfort is all we care about.
Nellie looks round.
Poor Chris. I wish I knew what to do.
Belle, aside, left.
She doesn't like the idea of meeting him before me. I hate to leave her. And yet, it's the only respectable course.
Crosses. Aloud, taking hat.
If you don't mind, Miss Jedbury, I'll run away. I really have a most pressing appointment. You're sure you don't mind? Goodbye.
Oh, thank you so much. Goodbye.
Follows him.
Goodbye.
Exit Bellaby.
How nice of him to go. I know I shall give way when Christopher comes, and I couldn't have done it comfortably before a third person. Especially such a good-looking third person. I hope Papa has sent him an invitation to my ball. Oh, look at those dreadful curtains. And the carpet.
Goes right, beginning to cry.
Oh, dear, I never felt so miserable in all my life.
Stands before open door, right.
That's the bedroom, I suppose.
Looks in.
A cracked looking-glass. And what a bed! Covered with boots and shoes. Well, at least I can put things tidy for the poor fellow.
Exits into room right and shuts door. Enter Job, door left. He carries a quantity of Jedburys wearing apparel. Job crosses behind table.
Here's the clothes. Where to put 'em is the next thing. There ain't a wardrobe or a cupboard on the blessed floor.
Throws clothes on sofa right. Looks round despondently.
To think that Mr. Christopher should have come down to this. Up to this.
Jedbury sings off left. Listens.
Ah, there he comes, and singing as light-hearted as a baby.
Jedbury's voice gets nearer, and he presently enters left, carrying a large sponge bath, in which are siphons of soda and a demijohn. He also carries a bundle under his arm.
I thought I told you to take a holiday.
I'm going, sir, as soon as I can get things straight.
Well, lend a hand with this and then scoot.
Puts the bundle on table. Job, taking hold of bath.
Where are we going to put it, sir? There ain't another inch of room in there.
Points right. Jedbury Jr. going to window.
Put it on the leads.
Job prepares to obey.
Here, hold on. Leave the liquid.
Takes demijohn and siphon out and stands them on sideboard. Job takes bath, gets out of the window, and disappears center.
Great institution, the Leeds. They host such a lot of things. I must get rid of Job, for if my respected dad found out that I kept a valet, it would be all up with me.
Surveying room.
Moving up into this garret was a brilliant idea. A few more like that would make my fortune. The governor thinks I am dwelling in gilded splendor at his expense. He comes, beholds Mrs. Sprague's sky parlor.
Job re-enters through window.
And tableau.
Goes left.
Yes, I think I can safely predict tableau. A parent who wouldn't be melted at the sight of this luxury would be tough indeed.
Job, coming down to sofa right.
Where are these clothes to go, sir?
On the leads.
But it's going to rain.
Then leave them. I'll find a place.
Looks at watch.
11 o'clock.
Aside.
By Jove, the governor will be here presently.
Aloud.
Job, you really must get out into the fresh air. You're not looking well.
Up to him and away left.
Where shall I go, sir?
Oh, on the leads. Somewhere to liven you up. How about Westminster Abbey or Kensal Green?
Job, picking up board.
What about this shelf, sir?
I'll fix that.
Job smiles.
What are you laughing at?
At the thought of you, sir, a wielding of a hammer.
Don't you drop your H's, Job.
And don't you drop the hammer, sir. It's very heavy.
Jedbury Jr. takes bundle from table, unrolls and displays a torn and dilapidated coat.
And what do you think of that, Job?
What's it for, sir?
What's it for? What are coats usually for? Help me on.
Job obeys, puts other coat on chair by table.
Might have been made for me. Gave a beggar chap 10 shillings for it just now. He's going to retire and live on the interest.
I wouldn't call it a bargain, sir.
That's because you don't know a bargain when you see one.
Walks to sideboard.
A man must dress up to his...
Takes up teapot, the spout of which is broken.
Teapot.
Listens.
Hark, Job, you really are extremely pale and must go home at once.
Turns him left.
You'll never be able to manage it, sir, by yourself.
Jedbury Jr. hustling him off left.
I insist.
Job exits left and Jedbury Jr. closes the door after him. Jedbury Jr. takes off ragged jacket and throws it on sofa.
Now let me inspect the apartments.
Looking up.
Ought to be plenty of ventilation.
Rocks table.
Rickety. That's the style.
Crosses to upper right, picks up hammer, knocks nail in wall, hangs up one of the coats brought in by Job.
What evil luck could bring my dad to town just now when he hasn't set foot out of Devonshire for over a year?
Drives another nail and hangs another garment.
Well, if I don't turn his visit to good account, I'm not Jedbury Jr.
Drives another nail along the wall and hangs another coat.
And now to spread my frugal repast.
Gets cloth from sideboard left.
A little too clean to appeal to the emotions, but here's a stunning hole. We'll turn that to the front.
Spreads cloth.
I ought to have some bread and butter. No butter. Butter betokens affluence. Bread. Just plain last month's bread. And a red herring. That herring idea was an inspiration. I told the landlady to send out for one. There is no such sign of abject poverty as a red herring.
Gets cup, saucer, and teapot.
That's a good old family relic, I'll be bound. Shouldn't like to be responsible for all this scandal that's heard.
Referring to teapot. Gets bowl.
Here is some nice, soft, sandy-looking sugar. That's good.
Knock at door left.
Not at home.
Pauses.
Perhaps it's a red herring.
Goes to door as if to speak to someone departing.
Here, hold on.
Goes out. Enter Nellie from right. She carries a torn patchwork counterpane.
His counterpane. I'd mend it if I could find a needle.
Remains at open door right, examining counterpane. Jedbury Jr. outside.
Oh, yes, one will be quiet enough.
Re-enters right, carrying a large loaf and a herring in a piece of paper. He turns and sees Nellie. They stand for a moment on the opposite thresholds, looking at one another. Then Nellie bursts out crying, shouts,
"Chris!"
and runs as he advances and throws her arms about his neck, drops counterpane by right down.
"Chris, my poor Chris!"
By Jove, it's our Nell come home from school. Here, Nellie, hold up. You're crying all over the herring, and it's been salted once.
I couldn't help it, Chris. I'm so unhappy.
What about?
What about?
Jedbury Jr., following her glance.
Oh, these quarters. Well, they're not altogether 18 carat. What of that?
Places parcels on table and puts on coat which he wore at his first entrance.
You brave boy.
Goes up and lifts counterpane. Jedbury Jr. aside.
Now, for the first time, I feel like a scoundrel. I consider it a meritorious action to deceive the governor, but it's an outrage on Nellie.
Nellie, coming right center.
Chris, won't you tell me how it has all happened?
Why, of course I will. But first, let's have a look at you.
Turning her round.
Quite a little Parisienne, I declare. Well, you've taken me by surprise, Nellie, but it's better than not taking me at all.
Surprise? Then Mamma didn't write you that I was to meet them here?
Them? So Mamma's coming too, eh? Well, I might as well take the whole dose at once.
Then it is as I expected. You've had another quarrel with Papa.
Not another, only a continuation of the same old original row.
Taking her hand.
Nellie, you are not a child now, and you can understand. Christopher Jr. is and has been a pretty bad case, but Christopher Sr. has never done the square thing, upon my honor. The fact is, Nellie...
Excuse me, Chris, but I decline to hear another syllable till you have eaten your breakfast.
Goes to table.
Shall I pour you out a cup of tea?
Jedbury Jr. quickly following.
No, you don't understand that teapot. I've some new photographs over there. Amateur theatricals, you know. Go and have a look at 'em.
Oh, yes.
She goes to mantel and examines photos. Jedbury Jr. opens lid of teapot, aside.
Empty. I forgot all about the tea. Well, I hate tea anyhow. I know what I should like, though.
Looks toward sideboard and then at teapot.
By Jove, that's a brilliant idea.
Sees that her attention is attracted by photos, goes to sideboard, pours some brandy into teapot, and then squirts some soda from siphon in, watching Nellie all the time. Nellie examining photos.
What is this, Chris?
That's tea.
Eh?
Yes, tea for Tom, you know. Thomas Becket in the play.
I didn't know that Thomas à Becket wore a powdered wig.
Jedbury Jr. coming down with teapot.
Not that one, the upper fellow at the corner.
Pours out a cup of soda and brandy and drinks it.
Oh, how funny you look in this one.
Laughs, shows it.
Hamlet. Yes, I was funny in that.
Nellie, going up right and glancing at books.
I am very glad to know that you keep up your reading.
Jedbury Jr. rushing up uneasily.
Don't touch those. You won't understand them.
Taking her away.
They're Chinese.
Chinese? How clever you must be.
Crosses in front of table left.
Chris, I think I'll have a cup of tea.
No, don't. You wouldn't enjoy it. It's cold.
Right of table. Nellie, left of table, putting her hand on teapot.
So it is, just as cold as a stone.
Yes, I like it like that.
Well, sit down to your breakfast and I'll sit opposite and talk to you while you eat.
She sits and he looks hopeless.
The fact is, I'm not hungry just now. Really,
I insist. If you don't, I will go away this moment and wait in the street.
He sighs and sinks into chair.
Now I will cut the bread for you.
Pausing with loaf.
I suppose you have grown to like it thick these days?
Not too thick.
Watches her measure about a third of loaf.
Well, a medium then.
Cuts 3-inch slice and gives it. Jedbury Jr. aside.
That is what she calls medium.
Makes pretense of eating.
Here is a fork for your fish.
Thanks awfully.
Eats some herring, then secretes small portion behind chair. Aside.
Over-friendly feline. Puss. Why did I discourage that cat's advances?
Takes a drink, eats. Nellie, seeing him eat.
That is better. Now tell me, how did you come to this state of insolvency?
Oh, by degrees. I've never been able to keep out of debt on Dad's allowance, and instead of permitting me to augment that allowance by going into business, he has always insisted on a profession.
Rises and goes center. Nellie rises.
But come now, cheer up. That long face does not sit well on a debutante. By the by, when is the flare-up?
Swings her round. Nellie crosses to right center.
My dance? Next Wednesday. You are coming down.
He shakes his head.
But you must, if it is only to meet Dora.
Dora? And who is Dora?
A darling.
Really?
Chris, I want you to fall desperately in love with her.
What's she like?
Oh, very clever. Not a bit like me. Quite superior.
Jedbury Jr. aside.
That lets me out. She's safe.
She's quite old.
Ah.
Almost 21.
Oh. And what would such an aged person be doing in a convent school?
Studying special branches. Yes, she has made up her mind to become a nun. Chris, I feel sure she has a history. A past, you know.
No.
Aside, left center.
Blue spectacles and a broken heart.
Aloud.
Well, if I'm invited, I'll run down to see the last of a certain jolly little girl.
Embraces her.
Who is going to degenerate into a society lady.
Looks at watch.
What time did you expect to be called for?
Mama said about 12.
And Dad said about 11. Well, that is as near as they ever agree about anything.
Do they still go for weeks without speaking to one another except through whimper?
I imagine so.
Mrs. Glib, off.
George, these stairs!
Hush, here they are.
Nellie, going to door left and listening.
No, it isn't Mama and Papa, for they are talking quite amiably.
Mrs. Glib, outside.
But, George, it cannot be so far up.
Confound it, it's the Glibs.
Who are the Glibs?
Mrs. Glib is the founder of the Anti-Pitch and Toss Society.
And Mr. Glib?
Mr. Glib. Oh, well, he's just Mrs. Glib's husband.
Knock at door. Jedbury Jr. puts finger on his lips. Nellie goes up and round to right. Mrs. Glib puts her head in, door left.
Mr. Jedbury?
Not at home.
Enter Mrs. Glib, followed by Mr. Glib.
Ah, how do you do? Delighted. I said not at home, didn't I? Absurd habit of mine. Always say not at home when I mean come in.
Is shaking hands all the time with Glib, who is perfectly apathetic.
Permit me, my sister Nellie. Mr. and Mrs. Glib. This is Mr. Glib.
Glib releases himself and sits on stool at side of table left. Mrs. Glib, right center, crossing there.
Delighted. Have heard about you from your dear mother.
Shakes Nellie's hand, effusively to Glib.
George, Miss Jedbury, Christopher's sister.
He slowly nods.
Pardon the familiarity, Miss Nellie, but while in town I have been endeavoring to act a mother's part to your naughty brother, and Mr. Glib,
looking at him for corroboration,
takes the most vivid interest in the rogue.
Glib's countenance must be absolutely devoid of expression now and through the entire play. Nellie, center.
It is very kind of him.
It is, but he is so energetic. Christopher!
Looks round.
Surely these are not the apartments we visited before.
Jedbury Jr. aside.
Damn it, she'll spoil everything.
Aloud.
Oh, yes. They've shrunk a bit in the cleaning, but they're the same.
We had no idea it was so far up.
You must have judged by the going down. It isn't half so far going down.
Aside to Nellie.
Don't take any notice of her. No memory. Drinks.
And where is your grand piano?
Looking at Glib.
It was a grand, was it not, George?
Glib slowly opens his mouth as if to speak.
Ah, I thought so.
Aside to Nellie in lowered voice.
Mr. Glib is always the personification of accuracy.
Glib begins his business slowly.
But the piano, where is it gone? Don't tell me you've lent it to a friend, you reckless boy.
To Nellie.
He has absolutely no idea of the value of money.
During the following dialogue, Glib absently pours out liquid from the teapot into cup. Christopher tries to catch his eye and looks appealingly at him, but he sips and then drinks the cupful down with a perfectly stolid countenance. Christopher draws a long sigh of relief. This business must not be hurried.
£10, my dear, for wax dolls to give to the bootblack sisters at our last annual excursion. Mr. Glib was compelled to lecture him severely.
Goes to mantel and examines photos.
An excellent picture, full of force.
Puts the photo down.
And that brings me to the object of our visit. Mr. Glib is dying to know if you won't give us a recitation in character. Something funny, you know, at our recital for butcher's boys.
With pleasure.
Mrs. Glib tapping him on shoulder.
Good boy.
To Nellie.
To eradicate the gambling instinct, it is necessary to supply the infant mind with constant diversion. You must join our association. Now, Christopher, we are going to take one turn around the park, and Mr. Glib thinks we might persuade your sister to accompany us. She shall be restored to you in an hour.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Glib crosses to left center.
Then come along. George, are you quite ready?
Aside to Nellie, who crosses left in lowered voice.
I should like you to become better acquainted with Mr. Glib. He's a wonderful man. Au revoir, Christopher. We will take good care of your sister. Come, George.
Glib rises. Mrs. Glib takes Nellie's arm and exits left. Glib follows to door and then pauses, opens his mouth as if to speak to Jedbury Jr., when Mrs. Glib's voice is heard again outside.
George!
Glib subsides and goes quietly off.
Mr. Glib is quite garrulous this morning. He coughed once, and I caught him elevating his eyebrows on 2 distinct occasions.
Closes door. Going center, feeling his chin.
Hang it all, Job forgot to shave me. Why isn't a fellow taught to shave at school? He might practice on the masters. Well, if things continue at this downhill pace, I shall have to study the art, so I might as well begin at once.
Going to bedroom right.
I think I'd better shut the door, for if I were disturbed, it might be fatal.
Takes torn coat and exits into bedroom, shutting door. After slight pause, a knock on door left, followed by the entrance of Christopher Judbury Sr., Mrs. Judbury, and Whymper. The latter carries Mr. Judbury's stick in one hand and Mrs. Judbury's parasol in the other. Judbury looks round the room, then walks across to right center. Whymper takes up his position in the middle, and Mrs. Judbury sits left.
What a barbarous apartment!
Judbury Sr. right.
Whymper.
Whymper, respectfully but without the slightest inflection of voice.
Yes, sir?
My compliments to your mistress, and if she doesn't like the apartment, she can get out of it.
Whymper, without moving.
Yes, sir.
Now turns his head to Mrs. Judbury and gives the least cough.
Mr. Jedbury suggests, madam, that it would be more comfortable to you to remain below in the carriage.
Let your master know that my remarks are not addressed to him.
Yes, mum?
moving only his head and giving the same introductory cough, to Jedbury Sr.
Madam is content to remain for the present.
Remains immovable. Jedbury Sr. walking to left and back again.
A pretty state of affairs for my son. Absolute pauperdom. I suppose he thinks that the knowledge of his condition will soften my resolution. The spendthrift will find that he is mistaken.
Mrs. Jedbury, sitting right of table.
I regret that I directed my daughter here amid such squalor.
Turns face left, sees Herring, business.
Whimper.
Yes, sir?
You can remind your mistress that what is good enough for my son is good enough for her daughter.
Whimper,
Yes, mum?
if your master wishes to openly insult me, pray don't let him restrain himself on my account.
A scream heard from inside of bedroom.
Whimper, there is a tragedy being perpetrated in that room. Give me my parasol.
He obeys.
Whimper, come with me.
They all approach door. Jedbury, Whimper is in the middle. Mrs. Jedbury, Jedbury Jr. comes out without his coat and a gash on his chin from shaving. Mrs. Jedbury drops parasol and rushes at him. Whimper falls back to center, and Jedbury Sr. drops down right.
Christopher, my son!
Jedbury Jr. falling on her shoulder.
Mother!
Aside.
Tableau.
Aloud.
Excuse me.
Darts into room and returns in torn coat looking penitent.
My poor boy! I thought something fearful had occurred. Say, oh say you were not about to take your life.
No, Mother. I was trying to shave.
Thank heaven for that.
Crosses to left chair. Jedbury Sr. right.
Whimper, tell your mistress not to make a fool of herself.
Yes, sir?
Turns his head and coughs as before.
Whimper, tell your master that I shouldn't dream of usurping his privilege.
Jedbury Jr. adjusting court plaster to his chin.
Nellie has been here, Mother.
We met her on the stairs below. The carpeted stairs, thank goodness. Mrs. Glib has kindly consented to drop her at our hotel.
Jedbury Jr. center.
I regret, sir, that I am compelled to entertain you in such humble quarters, but circumstances
Displaying torn coat.
over which I have no control.
Jedbury Sr. right.
The circumstances don't appear to have got down to your boots yet.
Jedbury Jr. aside.
Deuce take it, I forgot all about the boots.
Aloud.
It's a man's duty to keep up appearances, and though my clothes
Ostentatiously buttoning coat.
may look expensive, they are not. I borrowed them from a friend.
Jedbury Sr. pointing at those hanging on wall.
Those are also borrowed from a friend, eh?
Jedbury Jr. turning.
Those? Oh, no.
Confused.
That's the stock.
The stock?
Yes, I'm going into the business.
Indeed. So you haven't disgraced me enough. Well, it is to discuss your future that I am here.
Delighted. Hope you stay a month or two. I mean, an hour or two.
10 minutes will be sufficient for the little I have to say, but that little I should prefer to say in private.
Looking pointedly at Mrs. Jedbury.
In private.
Turns up right.
Whimper,
crosses with dignity.
I have no wish to linger where I am not wanted.
Exit left, followed by Whimper at respectful distance, who leaves Jedbury's stick against chair by left down.
And now, sir.
Comes down left, Jedbury Jr. aside.
It's coming.
To him.
Take a chair.
Jedbury Sr. sits left by table.
I am a man of few words.
Now I'm in for a synopsis of his entire career.
At 10 years of age...
Jedbury Jr. sitting right center.
I thought so.
I had completed my school education.
Yes, sir.
At 20, I was a clerk in an East India house. At 30, I was a small trader on my own account.
Yes, sir.
At 50, I am a millionaire. Now, sir, by what means have I arrived at this pinnacle?
I give it up.
By planning a line of action and by following that line with industry and undeviating rule. I may say, sir, that in all my career I have never made a blunder.
Indeed. I thought you were responsible for my existence.
That is not the question. That you are a blunder is the disappointment of my life, for I looked, with my money and influence, to make an aristocrat and a gentleman of you.
Jedbury Jr. rising with impulsive anger.
In other words, you wanted another background for your vanity. It was not a question of giving your son the benefits you had been denied, but it was, my son is a gentleman. Who made him such? Christopher Jedbury the trader. My son is reading for the bar, will in time become a judge. Who has provided the money? Christopher Jedbury the merchant. Pah!
Goes up, then down center.
Forgive me, Father. I lost my self-control.
I was not aware that you possessed any.
I know that I shall never be able to satisfy you in the way that you desire, but I have a business head and an honest desire to put my practicability to the test. Why not give me a trial?
And your education may go to the winds. Oh, certainly. Which do you prefer, the counting house or the produce department? You forget, sir, that the first requisite of a businessman is brains.
And what proof have you that I lack brains?
Your reckless extravagance.
Enter Job left. He begins to remove things from table.
You started late in life to inculcate lessons of economy. You put me among a certain set. I did as I saw the others do.
Tries to catch Job's eye, but fails. Job begins clearing table, putting things on sideboard at back. Jedbury Sr. rises and goes left.
Whom have we here?
Job comes center, carrying plates.
Oh, nobody in particular.
Aside.
Why the devil did you come back?
Job comes left center.
I thought you were done, sir. I've been all over Westminster Abbey.
Introduce us.
Certainly. Mr. Job.
Job? Job what?
Jedbury Jr. aside.
Hanged if I know.
To Job.
What is your confounded name besides Job?
Smith, sir. I'm very sorry, sir.
Smith, of course. Smith, my father. My father, Smith. Smith and I are old chums. He comes in and out and makes himself quite at home. Don't you, Smith?
Thumps him on the back. Knife and fork fall.
Proud to know you. You'll pardon a little tete-a-tete.
Extends his hand. Job retreats.
Oh, you needn't mind, Job. I mean, Smith. We have no secrets.
Goes up center. Aside.
Get out.
watches Job nervously till he exits into bedroom right. Jedbury Sr. sits right of table.
Well, to return to our subject, I was about to make you a proposition. I want you to marry.
Jedbury Jr. looks up quickly.
Don't be in a hurry to decline. It is the only way to retrieve your social position and my good opinion. The lady is a niece of Major Headway, a retired army officer who has just purchased an interest in our Bombay house. This union will expand our resources and knit up our interests.
Jedbury Jr. sarcastically.
I see you want to boom up the business.
Jedbury Sr. ignoring his tone.
The girl has a fortune in her own right. She talks about going into a convent, but she is young and impressionable and will no doubt change her mind. Well, there is your chance.
Rises.
Win this young lady, and you shall have £50,000 and your bills receipted on your wedding day. Take time to consider. Let me see. This is Tuesday. We return to Devonshire on Saturday. Suppose you run down for Nellie's ball next week. In case you wish to communicate with me before then, we are staying at the Burlington.
Goes to left down and takes stick. Jedbury Jr. bows.
And now I'll leave you to chew the cud of my advice, and I warn you that your entire future as my son may depend on your decision.
Jedbury Jr. accompanying him to door left.
You shall have an answer this day, week without fail.
Bow from Jedbury Sr. Exit Jedbury Sr.
It was the easiest way to get rid of him. Well, it only wanted this to make my collapse complete.
Walking to and fro.
Mary, how the deuce could I? Even if I wanted to. If I am not the most unfortunate dog that ever lived, I'll be hanged.
Enter Bellaby left.
Don't, old chap. Hanging has become so beastly common.
Jedbury Jr. right center, seizing his hand abruptly.
By Jove, the very man I want.
What is it? A point on probate? Libel? Or...
Looking at room.
Sudden eviction?
Tom, don't be flippant. I'm in a hole and want you to help me.
Professional job, eh? Huh.
Aside.
My first.
To him.
I'm all attention.
Sits left.
I'm all attention.
Jedbury Jr. sits right center.
You remember 2 years ago my going on a voyage to Trinidad?
Yes. And I remember your coming back unexpectedly the next week. Climate too hot, wasn't it?
Well, yes. The place did become rather warm. The fact is, I got into an awful scrape.
I guessed as much. Well?
Well, on the trip out, we had an awful passage, and I kept my cabin till the night before we landed. Then, feeling like having a cigar, I strolled about on deck until the lights were out. I started on a voyage of discovery from my cabin. Finally I reached it, and seeing by a faint streak of moonlight a bundle in the lower berth, which I thought to be my clothes laid out for packing, I just pulled my coat off and jumped into the upper berth.
Movement of Bellaby.
In 2 seconds I was sound asleep. I don't know how long I remained so, when the sound of a gentle undulating snore,
Movement of Bellaby forward.
began to mix with my dreams. I did not recognize it as my own, and that awoke me.
And the snore?
Went placidly on. I thought of the bundle in the lower berth, and I struck a match. By its flickering light,
Rises.
I saw a sight which seemed to paralyze my spinal column. Hanging on that door peg was a sort of bifurcated jacket connected by a trellis work down the back.
You don't mean to say...
Corsets. I do. Sit down. In a flash, I was out of that berth and with coat in hand was making a graceful exit.
By Jove, what a spree.
Was it? The spree, as you call it, hadn't commenced. I opened the door and made a bolt.
Into your own cabin?
Rises.
No, sit down.
Puts him back.
Into the arms of an elderly military individual who happened to be doing the sentry act in front of the ladies' cabin. I endeavoured to explain, but as he had set his heart on my gore, there was nothing to do but to exchange cards and trust in a just heaven to kill the colonel before the meeting came off.
And did the just heaven come up to time?
No, not a bit of it. I had been in Trinidad about 2 hours when I received a note from the colonel. He had changed his mind about killing me. Instead, he intended to marry me.
Huh?
Attempts to rise. Jedbury Jr. pushing him back.
To his daughter Matilda, and don't keep bobbing about. He notified me that, notwithstanding his daughter's disinclination, nothing should prevent the ceremony from taking place in 3 days, and that if I premeditated escape, I should be merely offering my carcass as a target for his men. Now, there was a peculiar circumstance about this note. He addressed me.
Pauses, embarrassed.
Well, not by my own name. I looked for an explanation.
Where?
In my card case.
Oh, I see. You had given him someone else's card by mistake?
Rising.
Yes, that's it, by mistake.
Aside.
I can't tell him that it was his own.
Aloud.
Oh, I acted in good faith, but you see, it was in the dark.
Up to him, Bellaby nudging him.
I say, what a joke on the other fellow.
Jedbury Jr. nudging back.
A capital, wasn't it?
By the by, who was it? What was his name?
Oh, yes, the name. Well, the name was Glib.
Your talkative friend? Great. And how did it come out?
Well, the day came, and so did I, into the colonel's quarters. Everything was in readiness. The old chaplain, who had evidently been squared, was flanked, so to speak, by 4 soldiers, who stood at attention with drawn bayonets by way of encouraging me. Here were the bayonets. Here was I.
What did you do?
Do? I married Matilda.
And she?
Thoroughly prostrated by the situation, lay indisposed in an adjoining room.
And you never saw her?
Never set eyes on her.
Then how could you...
Well, the girl signed her part of the contract, and the same witnesses brought it to me.
And you signed?
Jedbury Jr. nods. Bellaby nudges him.
The other fellow's name?
Jedbury Jr. returning nudge.
Yes, the other fellow's name. The ceremony concluded, I was told I could go, as my father-in-law had no further use for me.
And, you returned home?
Just as soon as I could. Now, Tom, you are the only soul outside the contracting parties who know anything of this ridiculous affair. What I want to know is, am I married or am I not? There are numerous reasons why I must be single.
You're in love.
Wrong. I'm in debt. And my father suggests...
Bellaby places chair by table.
That I shall knit up his interests and expand his resources. Now, when I decline to marry the lady he has selected, I shall be shown the door. And, Tom, I can't start life on my own account with this Damoclean sword hanging over me.
Goes to him.
So for the love of heaven, prove this marriage void or kill Matilda.
Goes center.
All right, old man, I'll hunt up the law. By the by, what was the tyrant's name?
What? The old father, Dwyer, Colonel Richard Dwyer.
Produces pocketbook.
Here's his bloodthirsty card. Take it.
I'll drop you a line on Monday.
Moves to down left.
Then you'd better send to Devonshire.
Devonshire?
Jedbury Jr., herring business.
I'm going home for the festivities.
Going over to door left.
I'll come downstairs with you. They are wretched stairs, and I don't want you to break your neck. At least before Monday.
Exit left, followed by Bellaby. Enter Job, right. He carries a pair of muddy boots and boot brushes. Job, disconsolately.
I wonder how long this attic business is going to last. It ain't fit for the gentleman's gentleman, let alone for the gentleman himself.
Begins brushing boots, then stops.
Better clean 'em outside, for fear the dust should get on the drawing-room furniture.
Disappears through window. Knock at door left, followed by entrance of Dora. She is dressed in light gray and carries a purse in her hand. Dora, up left center, front table.
These can't be his rooms. Yet Nellie certainly got out at this house when we drove up from the station, and I've tried all the other floors. I should have asked those two young men I met on the stairs, but when a gentleman in a dilapidated coat is heaping curses on the head of all things feminine, especially marriageable things, it is an ill-chosen moment for a timid female to ask a favor. In the meantime, what am I to do about Nellie's purse? I don't wonder that she left it in the cab. She was so excited about meeting her brother again.
Gets book from sideboard. Reads inside.
Christopher Jedbury, Jr. Then it is right.
Business with poker chips and cards. Takes up race card.
Newmarket.
Puts card down. Goes to table.
What an extraordinary place. I suppose I'd better wait. I wonder if I might help myself to a cup of tea.
Pours from teapot into cup.
I am just dying of thirst.
Tastes and puts cup down.
Tea? So this is a sample of dear brother Chris, the hero that Nellie has set up for me to worship.
Smiles.
Forewarned, forearmed. Why, there is another door. Then probably this is only the kitchen.
Goes to door right and knocks, then opens and goes in. Enter Jedbury Jr. left.
Phew, I've got that much off my mind at any rate.
Crosses to right center and picks up second bracket, which he affixes to wall.
This morning I said to myself,
Looks round.
Where is that hammer?
Finds it.
I said to myself, a visit from my governor, and after that the deluge. Yet the deluge wasn't altogether the end of things. If I remember rightly, it was only the beginning.
Drops nail.
Where the deuce did that go to?
Looks along floor.
After the deluge, a grey dove came forth.
Enter Dora right, unperceived.
Who?
Still looking for nail, gets close to Dora and sees her skirt. His eye gradually travels up. He starts.
History is repeating itself.
I beg your pardon. I wish to see Mr. Jedbury.
Jedbury Jr. looking confusedly at his shabby coat.
Not at home. Not at home.
Aside.
Who is she?
I'm sorry for that. Perhaps I might wait.
Jedbury Jr. more confused.
Oh, there's no knowing when he'll be in. He's erratic.
But he lives here?
Well, yes. To a certain extent.
I see. He stays here with you.
Yes, that's it. We share and share alike.
I've no doubt you can give me the information I require. I wish to know at which hotel Mr. Jedbury's people are staying.
At the Burlington.
Thank you.
Crosses left.
I am sorry to have troubled you.
Goes to door left.
Don't mention it. Will you leave your name?
Dora, smiling.
Mr. Jedbury would not be any the wiser, I assure you. Good morning.
Good morning.
The Burlington, I think you said.
The Burlington.
Good morning.
Exit left. Jedbury Jr. remains staring at the door.
And the dove went from the ark and returned not again. I wonder whether Noah ever came across that dove when he got on dry land.
Sinks in chair left of table and watches where Dora went off. Medium curtain. End of Act 1. Act 2 of Christopher Jr. by Madeleine Lucette Ryley. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Act 2. Scene: a corner of the hall in Jedbury Sr.'s house in Devonshire. Door at back right and French window practicable left center. Staircase to archway up right. Entrance left internal entrance. As curtain rises, enter footman left internal entrance. He arranges table and 2 chairs left. Major Headway enters right upper entrance, followed by Whimper. The Major is about 65 years old, but brisk and hearty in his manner. His dress is extremely juvenile and somewhat dandified. He might have the least suspicion of an Irish accent.
Finished dinner, Whimper?
Whimper, right center.
Yes, sir. Coffee will be served here, sir. If you'll kindly take a seat, sir.
Major, right center.
Very good. Are we the first?
Yes, sir.
Whimper pins red flower in the Major's coat.
What's become of my niece, Miss Dora?
She went up to see Miss Jedbury in her room, sir.
Are you expecting many ladies this evening, Whimper?
A good many young ladies, sir.
Slightly upstage, left center.
Really? Really?
Turning.
How is my coat?
Whimper, coming down and arranging his coat.
A little. That's all right, sir.
No crease?
None, sir.
A man approaching the prime of life cannot be too particular about creases, whether they are in his coat or his constitution. Do you play chess, Whimper?
No, sir, but draughts is a game.
Draughts be damned!
Yes, sir.
Now, chess stimulates the mental faculties.
Whimper, respectfully withdrawing.
Anything more, sir?
Yes, it renews the exhausted vitality. Look at me. Who would believe that I was 40 last birthday?
Whimper, on a level with Major.
Nobody, sir.
Major, up to him confidentially.
The recipe is a secret, but I'll give it to you. A 20-minute sleep to be taken twice a day after meals, and a faithful application to the game of chess. Don't forget that, Whimper.
Down right.
No, sir.
Exit center to right after waiting for Jedbury Sr. Enter Christopher Jedbury Sr., center from right.
Ah, Major. Punctual as ever. Always the first, eh?
You forget, I'm a military man.
Shakes hands heartily.
Say rather you were a military man, for your signature on those papers has transformed you into an East India merchant.
All owing to the contemptible ingratitude of the nation that puts a young and able-bodied man on the retired list.
The nation's loss is my gain, Major. Your influence with the Rajas will double our Bombay profits in a year.
I wouldn't be too sure of that. There never was a headway yet that knew enough about business to get change for a shilling, unless it was the Queen's shilling.
Sits on seat right of stairs.
Well, that's my risk. And as for you, man must have an occupation, if only to keep him out of mischief.
Major nodding.
And my liver won't let me exist out of India.
Your niece talks of remaining behind, I understand.
Yes, Dora's got her mind fixed on a convent. A convent? It's enough to make the dead and gone Headways come out of their graves.
Rises.
She says she wants tranquillity. Now, if she would only learn chess. You play chess, Jedbury?
Crosses left.
Very little.
Voices off.
Here are the ladies. This is the only corner of the house left us, Major. Everywhere else is given to Nellie and her young folk.
Looks at watch.
We've just time for a cup of coffee in peace and quiet.
Crosses left. Enter Mrs. Jedbury and Mrs. Glib, right upper entrance. They are chatting. Mr. Glib follows. Mrs. Jedbury shaking hands.
Welcome to Devonshire, Major.
Turning.
Our friends, Mr. and Mrs. Glib, Major Headway.
She goes up back and drops down to sit head of table after Glib is seated left. Glib comes forward as if to shake hands, but Mrs. Glib steps in front of him, and he goes to his seat extreme left.
Delighted. So good of Mrs. Jedbury to invite us. Mr. Glib will be enchanted to know you. He takes such an interest in the militia. Nature intended Mr. Glib for a soldier, a leader of nations, but unfortunately he met me.
And surrendered. Sure, it's no wonder.
They sit. Mrs. Glib right upstairs, Major on her left. Enter Whymper with coffee.
Will you have some coffee, Mrs. Glib?
Thank you.
To Glib, who is about to take cup from Whymper.
George, you had better not take any. It makes him so excitable.
Whymper crosses right to Mrs. Glib, Major, and Jedbury Sr. right. Jedbury Sr. on chair left of stairs, tasting coffee and turning to Glib.
This is something peculiarly fine. I import it myself from Java.
Glib looks longingly at Jedbury Sr.'s cup. Mrs. Glib converses inaudibly with the Major, while Jedbury Sr. continues to address Glib.
Ah, my dear Glib, you are not in business, I believe.
Glib shakes his head and prepares to speak.
An arduous life, sir, and one which makes great demands on the intellectual faculties. The reward comes when a man can lean back.
Leans back.
In his chair and survey the result of his own unaided efforts.
Tastes coffee. Whymper at table left.
Whymper.
Rises.
My compliments to your mistress, and I am accustomed to take sugar in my coffee.
Hands cup to Whymper and goes up at back. Whymper is at table.
Whymper?
Whymper crosses right.
Your master has already had 3 lumps. If he chooses to ruin his digestion, it is no affair of mine.
Crosses right and sits left of stairs. Whymper carries it to Jedbury Sr., who signs to him to put it on the table. Jedbury then absently hands sugar to Glib, who, having no coffee, quietly takes sugar and eats it.
Then you have never entered the matrimonial field, Major?
No, that is the only engagement I ever ran away from. Woman is man's natural-born enemy.
But you have been told to love your enemy, Major.
Bah!
True, and as a God-fearing man I've done it. It has been at once my pain and my delight to love them all, at a distance.
But it was your duty to make a choice.
What? And slight all the others?
Ah, Major Headway, you've never been under fire.
Indeed I have. but after taking an inventory of my wounds, I've always come to the conclusion that discretion is the better part of valor.
Whymper exits quietly through door right upper exit.
Allow me.
Rises and crosses to table left with Mrs. Glibb's cup.
Indeed. Quite a character, and I adore character. Major Headway, you must positively come to our next theatrical performance.
Delighted.
Comes Center.
They're making quite a stir in the dramatic world.
Ah, indeed.
Now, Major.
Taps him with fan.
Only yesterday.
Going up to Mrs. Jedbury.
The committee waited on Mr. Glibb in a body and implored him, positively implored him, to forsake the amateur for the professional stage.
God bless me.
He expostulated with them for 2 hours.
Appealing to Glib.
It must have been quite 2 hours, George.
Glib prepares to speak.
Yes, I thought so. And in spite of all his arguments, they would not take no for an answer.
It was very flattering.
Rises, crosses down right, puts cup on mantel.
Mr. Glibb's own remark. It was flattering.
Crosses left to Major.
Major Headway, I should like you to become better acquainted with Mr. Glibb. He's a wonderful man.
Mrs. Jedbury going up.
Major, will you take Mrs. Glibb to the ballroom? I must look after the young people.
Exit right upper entrance. Major aside looking at Glib.
I wonder if the mummy will offer any objection.
Mrs. Glib center.
Ready, Major?
Turning, he turns toward stairs and offers his arm.
Don't you trouble to come, George.
To the Major.
He has such a highly strung temperament that I am compelled to curb his activity.
Enter Whymper center. Goes to Jedbury Sr., takes cup, crosses to table right, takes it off center. Major and Mrs. Glibb exit upstage. Jedbury Sr. rises to Glib.
A man of great nerve, the Major.
Glib, sugar business.
Well connected, too. Lived in India all his life. Most of the native princes are friends of his.
Both exit right upper entrance.
Well, if the Major's the result of chess, drafts is good enough for me.
Enter Jedbury Jr. through archway, center right. He is vainly struggling to fix his white tie. One end is much longer than the other, and the bow sticks under his chin.
Not a sign of a letter from Tom, and I've ruined myself in telegrams. If he hasn't found anything out, why the deuce couldn't he wire and say so?
Pulling at tie.
I knew it, and this is the last one. I've ruined 3. I've a good mind to put my pocket handkerchief round my neck. How does Job manage these things? I might as well be on a desert island for all the assistance I shall find here.
Tears tie off.
Confound the thing!
Throws it on floor. Enter Dora, right upper entrance.
No, don't do that. Let me tie it for you.
Jedbury Jr. aside.
The grey dove in pink plumage.
Dora aside.
Young Mr. Jedbury's eccentric friend.
Both stoop for the tie and knock their heads together.
I beg 10,000 pardons.
Both hold tie.
One will do.
Smiles.
I've had harder knocks than that.
Puts fan and handkerchief on chair left of stairs. Flips tie away from him, taking tie.
Hold up your chin.
Dora puts tie round his neck.
But I couldn't think of...
Turns his head away. Dora impatiently jerking his head round.
Oh, yes, you could.
But really,
Turning his head away.
Who the deuce?
If you don't want to be strangled, you had better keep still.
Arranges tie. Jedbury Jr. aside.
Who on earth can she be?
Dora jerks his head round, and he remains gazing at her till she has finished.
There. I think that will do.
Steps back and goes up a little.
I'm sure it will. Beautifully.
Aside.
I wish I could get it undone again.
Crosses left. Aloud.
If it wouldn't be troubling you too much, you might tighten this wibbly-wobbly bit.
Dora does so.
There.
Going.
Now remember, the next time you have any differences of opinion with a white tie, you must exercise a little patience, and don't confound the thing, for I may not be by to settle your difficulties. Goodbye.
Picks up fan and leaves her handkerchief without noticing and exits right. Jedbury Jr. looking after her.
She's gone, confound it. Who is she? She's an apparition. Must be. Now you see her, now you don't. Yes, she's a vision. A vision of loveliness. Hello.
Picks up handkerchief.
A spiritual pocket handkerchief.
Looks at corner.
D.H. Now what does D.H. stand for? Dark horse? Dead heat? Damned hurry? That fits her best. I wonder if I could improve the acquaintance. Perhaps Matilda wouldn't like it.
Enter Nellie, right upper entrance. Puts handkerchief in pocket.
Why haven't I heard from Tom?
Hello, Chris?
Nell, has Tom Bellaby turned up yet?
No, and I think it's very rude of him to be so late.
Crosses to stairs.
Of course it is. He's a scoundrel of the first order. He promised to write to me here on a matter of the utmost importance. Nellie, are you quite sure there was no letter from yesterday?
Nellie, shaking her head.
Quite sure. I should have seen it.
Nellie, who is the pink girl?
Both by stairs.
What is she like?
Don't ask me, Nell. She's a sort of angelic ghost.
Goes left center.
The description is too vague.
Going to him.
Remember, you have promised to make yourself agreeable to my friend Dora. As soon as I have helped Mama to say how do you do to everybody, I'll introduce you.
Where is Father?
I don't know. I think he and Mother have had a tiff since dinner. Whymper seems very busy. But I must run away. Mind, I expect you to pay great attention to Dora.
Nellie exits up staircase right.
Certainly. Meanwhile,
Enter Whymper from left internal entrance.
I'll try and find my will-o'-the-wisp.
Looking off archway.
There she is again.
I beg your pardon, sir. Have you seen the master?
No, Whymper. Who is that young lady?
Whymper looking off.
Miss Headway, sir. Major Headway's niece.
Turns left and goes upstage.
By Jove, my intended.
Looks off.
Ah, she's gone.
Exit right.
I wonder where the master can be.
Enter Jedbury Sr. Center from left. Whymper meets him.
I beg your pardon, sir.
Handing letter.
I found this letter under your desk, sir. It is marked important. It must have fallen from yesterday's bag.
Who brought the bag yesterday?
George, sir.
Dismiss him.
Yes, sir.
At once.
Yes, sir.
Exit Whymper, center right. Jedbury Sr. taking letter.
It is yesterday's postmark.
Opens letter.
What is this? My dear Christopher, I've nothing very satisfactory to report about your affairs. I find the Colonel has been dead 2 years, and no trace of his daughter, your wife, is to be found.
Sits left center.
It will be difficult to obtain evidence of the ceremony, but I should advise you to steer clear of matrimony till more can be learned. I am sorry for you, old man, but if you will get yourself into equivocal situations, you must take the consequences. Yours always, T.B.
Looking at envelope.
Christopher Jedbury, Esquire. This must be a mistake. T.B. Ah, it is from young Bellamy, and it is intended for my son.
Glances quickly over letter, then starts.
So the young blackguard is married and separated from his wife. A fitting climax to his disgraceful career.
Crosses left, walking to and fro, crushing the letter in silent passion.
And not a word about it when I suggested marriage to him. I have invited this rascal to my house.
Suddenly.
He shall not remain here. I have been weak, but this ends it.
Sits chair upstage left.
My son, for whom I have toiled that he might rest, for whom I have saved money that he might spend it, the boy who was to have shed lustre on the name of Jedbury, the gentleman who was to have raised the tradesman to the summit of his ambition, and this is the end of my life's work.
Enter Jedbury Jr. at archway right, looking back.
It's no use. The spectre's vanished again.
He comes downstairs, sees Jedbury Sr.
What's the matter, father? You don't seem well.
Starts to come down. Jedbury Sr. hiding letter.
I will give him a chance of explaining.
Aloud.
It is nothing. I have been thinking of business. By the by, Christopher, what about my proposition?
Jedbury Jr., Center, goes up to him a little carelessly.
Proposition? Oh, well, I've been considering it.
Jedbury Sr., watching him narrowly.
Indeed? And your reply is favourable?
Distinctly favourable.
Jedbury Sr. controls his temper with difficulty.
I have had the good fortune to see the lady.
Oh, and you approve of her?
I don't like your way of putting it. The question is whether she is ever likely to approve of me. I say ever because I shouldn't think of asking her yet a while.
And your object in waiting?
Well, the fact is, father, I've a notion that I'm capable of earning my living, and I don't intend to marry till I've put my theory to the test.
Really? Are you sure that is your only reason?
Is it not enough?
You equivocate, and you also seem a little forgetful. Suppose I suggest another, a different sort of impediment.
Impediment?
Yes, your being already married, for instance.
Jedbury Jr. crosses downright aside.
Good Lord, he's found it out. Oh, it's all up.
Jedbury Sr., following him, Center.
I have surprised you. Then bigamy is in your future list of peccadilloes?
No, sir. You wrong me. The ridiculous little affair to which you allude must, of course, be illegal. I assure you, on my honour.
Your honour? Damn it, sir! Your honour never impelled you to confess to this ridiculous little affair.
No, the fact is I was expecting a letter of importance, and I was temporizing until it arrived.
Oh, you were.
Crosses to him.
Is this the letter?
Hands letter. Jedbury, Jr., reading envelope.
Christopher Jedbury, Esquire.
Aside.
Tom Bellaby's a fool.
Now the letter having arrived, further temporizing is unnecessary.
Of course. But you see, sir, this turn of affairs has rather upset my calculations. For instance, I never intended you to see this letter.
I gathered that.
What the deuce am I saying?
But I am quite interested. Go on.
Goes left center and sits. Jedbury, Jr. crosses to him with great earnestness.
Father, there has never been any sort of confidence between us. We have never understood one another, and that I suppose made me diffident when I got into difficulty. But with regard to the difficulty itself, even you, when you learn the particulars, must see that I am not to blame. I'll tell you the story.
Brings chair from left down.
No, sir.
Rises.
Even my endurance has a limit. Not a word of this disgraceful intrigue will I hear, so spare yourself a tissue of lies.
Father, upon my soul!
Jedbury Sr. crosses right angrily.
Consider our relations severed.
Music for Lancers.
From this moment you are in my house under protest.
Goes up right center. Music heard off. Nellie comes right to top of stairs.
Chris, you're wanted. Lots of people have come. You must help me start them dancing. I've told them to play an extra.
Exit Nellie back through archway right. Music continues softly. Jedbury, Jr. quietly crosses up right.
Then I will relieve you of my presence.
Crosses right. Jedbury Sr. bows, goes towards left, then halts down left center.
I suppose you have no definite plans?
Jedbury, Jr. haltingly.
I don't think, sir, you have any right to inquire.
I have a motive in asking. You spoke with some grandeur just now about earning a living.
Smiles.
I am curious to put your words to the test. I hear that Simpson, my managing man in Bombay, has discharged a clerk. I have to send someone out at once. For Christopher Jedbury, Jr., my son, to go would lower the dignity of the firm. But as I have already disowned you, your name is a blank for you to fill up. Those are my conditions. There is a position. Take it or leave it.
Walks away across left.
I will take it.
Ah, well. If in 2 years Mr. Simpson's account of the new clerk is satisfactory, I may see fit to revoke my decree. In the meantime, I will trust to that honour which you are so fond of parading.
What is it you want?
That you communicate with no one here in Devonshire.
Jedbury, Jr., after a pause.
I promise.
As for the details of your journey, they can be arranged by letter.
I should prefer it.
Then there is nothing more.
Nothing.
Jedbury Sr. turns away and goes up.
Stay.
Jedbury Sr. stops and turns.
There is something. You may remember a shabby fellow you met at my London lodgings. If you could arrange to give him some rough work in your Bombay house, he would be found a handy man.
It shall be arranged.
Thank you.
Aside.
I've secured a place for Job, and I shan't be without a friend.
Jedbury Sr. coming down a little.
If you desire to remain through the evening, it might be better for appearances.
Men in my position do not have to consider appearances.
Still, you might as well remain.
I should prefer that you made my excuses.
Very well.
Approaching him.
As this is to be goodbye, we may as well simulate friendship.
Extends his hand, comes down right. Jedbury Jr. declining his hand.
You forget, sir, I am no longer your son. Your clerk should beware of undue familiarity.
Turns away.
As you please.
Pause, then goes to center.
At any rate, I have done my duty.
Extends his hand again, puts it back, goes up to door, exit center right. Lancers finish.
Your name is a blank for you to fill up. I wonder who it was that first said, give a dog a bad name and you may as well hang him at once. I think I'll go on the terrace and smoke. No, I won't smoke. It's extravagant.
Sits left center.
I shall have to walk to the station. That's 5 miles. There's a moon. Oh, that's some comfort. It's a queer sensation being thrown out of one's home.
Business with money.
It's lucky I took a return ticket. The stock of ready is very low. I suppose what they call my personal effects will fetch something. There's always a corresponding advantage even in a dilemma like mine. I have to part with my clothes, and I'm going to a climate where I shan't need any. I wonder what Tom said in that letter.
Sees that he has torn it up.
It will take me some time to find out now.
Kneels and begins to pick up small pieces. Reads small piece.
Nothing satisfactory to report. I might have known it.
Continues to gather up pieces. Enter Dora at archway right, fanning herself.
I hate the Lancers. I shall wait till the round dances begin.
Looks at program.
Mr. Jedbury for the Lancers. Why will elderly gentlemen insist on dancing when it makes them puff? I wonder what has become of the son, the hero I have heard so much about, but have never seen. I am sure I shall dislike him. I hate dissipated people.
Sees Jedbury Jr.
What on earth is that young man doing here? Gracious, it is my poor helpless friend again. He is always on the floor.
Jedbury Jr. looking up, aside.
My fairy queen.
She turns to go. Aloud.
Don't fade away. For a minute or two. The mortal is in trouble.
And what is the matter now?
Everything.
Still on floor. Dora pointing to torn paper.
What is that?
That's a letter. I'm endeavoring to master the contents.
Why don't you get up?
Jedbury Jr. staring at her.
Eh?
Get up.
Certainly.
Rises, dusts his knees with his handkerchief.
You look as if you'd had a shock.
Yes, I've had a bit of a blow.
Indeed. I am very sorry.
Are you? Well, that's awfully good of you. I mean, you're very kind, don't you know?
Doesn't it strike you that it would be as well to get someone to introduce us?
No, not now. I want to be alone.
She goes right.
Alone with you, I mean.
Really? You must excuse me.
Goes to stairs right.
But an introduction is quite unnecessary. You are Miss Headway.
How did you know that?
I'm right, am I not?
Oh, yes, quite right. I am Dora Headway.
Dora. Not blue spectacles. I mean, not Miss Jedbury's school friend.
Dora nodding.
You seem surprised.
I am. You see, I heard that you were very superior and clever and all that sort of thing, you know.
How funny.
I don't mean that. I mean, I don't know what I mean.
Goes left a little.
I don't believe you do. May I ask your name?
Jedbury Jr. aside.
Name? Oh, by George, I haven't thought of one yet.
Aloud.
My name? Well, it's a blank.
A blank? What does the A stand for? Arthur, I suppose. Arthurs are always irrational sort of people.
Jedbury Jr. aside.
Good. I'm christened, and that relieves me of a great responsibility.
Dora, business with program.
Come, Mr. Blank. You seem rather sorry for yourself. Shall I take pity on you and give you the first waltz?
Sits on couch right. Jedbury Jr. stands by couch right.
Miss Headway, you are an angel, but the fact is I am not exactly a guest here. I am only a clerk of Mr. Jedbury's, and having had the interview for which I came, I have to return to London.
What? He hasn't asked you to remain?
No.
Oh, I see. The interview was not exactly...
Cordial? No, not to any great extent.
Don't think me rude. You see, I often take an interest in gentlemen, in a motherly sort of way.
What?
Oh yes, I know I am young, but I've had tremendous experience.
What? Not in a motherly sort of way?
Dora rises and crosses left center.
What I mean is that we have a bond of sympathy. You see, I have discovered that you don't regard women from a sentimental point of view, and as I am going into a convent, we both can afford to be perfectly frank.
Jedbury Jr. rises, goes to her center.
Can we? Then I should strongly advise you against the convent business. A good deal of sameness in a convent.
That is what Uncle says.
Ah, your uncle is evidently a man of sense. Well, I suppose I must be getting along.
If you should happen to change your mind and remain for the waltz, you may hold me to my promise.
May I?
Aside.
By George, I should like to.
Going upstairs. Aloud.
I take great interest in you, Miss Headway.
Mr. Blank!
Oh, I often take an interest in girls, in a fatherly sort of way.
Exits upstairs quickly. Dora looks after him over balusters. Enter Jedbury Sr. and Major, right upper entrance.
Ah, Dora, my girl.
Coming down right of Jedbury Sr.
When you come to Bombay, you must come and stay with me.
Jedbury Sr. down left.
I go to Bombay very seldom nowadays. My manager out there is a very superior person. You'll find it quite safe to leave all the business matters to him.
Can he play chess?
I doubt it. Businessmen, you know, accept recreation as a disagreeable duty.
Dora crosses left in front of Major to Jedbury Sr.
Very well, Mr. Jedbury. I shall scratch your name off my program. I decline to be a party to any disagreeable duty.
Oh, now.
Goes upstage at back with her. Enter Nellie on stairs. She comes down left. Jedbury comes down. Nellie speaks from top of stairs, aside to Dora.
Dora, I want to introduce Christopher.
Looks round, crosses left.
Where is he? I have promised that you will give him the first waltz.
Dora right center.
Very sorry, dear. It's gone.
What a pity.
Crosses to Jedbury Sr.
Papa, what has become of Christopher?
He has been suddenly called away.
What? He's not gone back to town?
Yes, it was a matter of business. He desired me to make his apologies.
Exit right. Nellie aside.
Christopher gone, and without bidding anyone goodbye. What can have happened?
Quadrille. Dora goes down extreme right. Exit Nellie, right upper entrance.
I shall sneak off for a quiet smoke. If anyone asks for me, you don't know what has become of me.
Exits door left. Dora laughs. Enter Nellie quickly, right upper entrance.
Oh, Dora, I'm the most miserable girl in all the world.
Crosses left.
What's the matter?
There has been a terrible quarrel between Christopher and Papa.
How do you know?
Mamma is in hysterics. I asked Papa what was the matter, but he gave me one stern look and then said, Nellie, You must forget you ever had a brother. Christopher is dead.
Turns to stairs.
Oh, Nellie, what do you mean?
Nellie, bursting into tears.
Oh, Dora, what shall I do? You'll never meet him now.
Dora, crossing to right.
I'm so sorry, Nellie dear.
And I've got to go and dance this beastly quadrille.
Exits right.
Poor Nellie. What a shame to spoil her birthday party. This must be the old gentleman's day for hauling people over the coals. First it's the poor clerk, and then it's his own son. Oh, I have no patience with him, and I've got to dance with him. I shall go and hide with Uncle in the smoking room.
Exits door left down. Enter Jedbury Jr. through archway right, carrying overcoat, hat, and valise. He has changed his clothes. Enter Bellaby, right center. Jedbury Jr. throws coat, etc. on chair.
Why, Chris, old man, what's up? Where are you going?
So you've come at last. Nice fellow you are. You've done it.
Done what?
That letter.
Well, what about it? Didn't you get it?
Oh, yes, I got it.
Well?
Why hadn't you the sense to direct it to me?
I did. Christopher Jedbury, Esquire.
Well, aren't there two of us? Stupid.
Hang it all, I forgot the junior. It has fallen into your governor's hands? Oh, I'm awfully sorry, old man.
So am I. What's the good of that?
Not much. Where are you going?
To India.
Are you serious?
Do I look as if I were joking? Tom, there is no sense in crying over spilt milk. The governor and I have had a split, and this time it is beyond repair.
Puts down bag, up stage left.
You'll write to me when I get away, for I trust you to be the one little connecting link between me and England.
But your sister Nellie...
Jedbury Jr., left center, biting his lip.
I have given my word to hold no communication.
Upon my soul, Chris, I am sorry.
Show it, Tom. Try and straighten out that matrimonial tangle for me, because...
You're in debt.
Wrong. I'm in love.
No. Oh, well, old fellow, I wish you luck. But is there nothing I can do for you? Don't be offended.
Pulls out money.
You know you're welcome to anything I've got.
Thanks, no, I won't start my new career by borrowing.
Rubbish. For old acquaintance' sake, have a fiver.
Jedbury Jr. suddenly.
I will take something.
Good business.
I'll take a cigar.
Right you are.
Going up.
I'll get my cigar case.
Exit right upper entrance.
Dora. Something awfully sweet and confiding about that name. She looks like a Dora.
Suddenly.
I would like to stay for that waltz.
Comes down.
It would be worth swallowing a bit of pride for. I'm hanged if I don't go and change my clothes again.
Goes upstairs, taking bag with him. Enter Whimper, right upper entrance.
I'm sorry, Master Christopher, to be sent with such a message, but the master says...
Well?
He says, sir, that your departure having been already announced, there will be no need for you to take leave of the family.
Very well, Whimper. Anything more?
Yes, sir. The carriage is waiting for you at the door.
Tell my father I prefer to walk.
Whimper looks pained.
All right, Whimper, it's no fault of yours.
I beg your pardon, sir, but you'll allow me to send on your bag for you?
All right, Whimper. Goodbye.
Holds out his hand.
Goodbye, Master Christopher.
Say goodbye to the other servants for me.
Yes, sir.
Exits right center with bag.
My congé direct. I cannot stay now. No, it would be too humiliating.
Takes up his coat and finds Dora's handkerchief.
Her handkerchief. Mine now, for as the knights of old used to carry their ladies' favours to the tilt, so shall this go with me, to remind me of the fight I mean to win.
Goes left. Quadrille stops. Nellie enters softly downstairs. Nellie, coming down, carries envelope.
Chris, are you alone?
Jedbury Jr. right.
Yes, what's the matter, Nell?
Oh, don't pretend it's nothing, for I know everything. You're going away, never to come back any more.
Who knows? Perhaps someday. Oh, don't cry, Nell.
Someday. Sounds such a long way off.
Goes right a little.
Now, little sister, don't do that.
Touching the envelope.
What is this?
My birthday present. A check from Papa. I've transferred it to you. You will take it, won't you?
Jedbury Jr. shaking his head.
My dear Nellie, I couldn't.
I know it isn't much, but it will help you till you get settled.
It isn't the amount, dear. You don't understand.
Yes, I do. It's because you are too proud.
But, Nellie, there's no necessity. Why, bless your heart, I'm a regular Croesus.
Crosses left center.
Really?
Really?
Aside.
Lord, forgive me. Come now, wish me good luck.
Enter Bellaby, right upper entrance.
And show me a smiling face before I go.
Embraces her.
Don't laugh at us, Mr. Bellaby. We are saying goodbye.
Falls into Chris's arms. Waltz till end of act.
Don't mind me.
Puts cigars in Jed's pocket on chair upright.
There's the waltz music. Go along, Nellie. Take care of her, Tom.
Bellaby approaching her.
May I?
Crosses over to her. She leans on his arm as he leads her off right. She turns and runs down to Chris, who meets her halfway. They kiss, and she and Bellaby exit right.
Goodbye. And now to tramp to the station.
Kneels and turns his trousers up, goes to window left and looks out.
I shall go across the park this way. I shan't have to run the gauntlet of the people.
He is opening window when waltz music begins.
By Jove, the waltz. The first waltz.
Listens.
I should have liked that waltz.
Enter Dora from door left.
I knew Uncle would go to sleep if he once found a comfortable armchair. Oh, there you are. Have you forgotten our engagement? Perhaps you are afraid of missing the train.
Jedbury Jr. rising.
Oh, no, not at all.
Absently feeling in pockets.
I can get a special, you know.
Can you? Then in fulfillment of my promise, we will take just one turn. Here.
Goes up a little.
One good turn.
Music louder. Jedbury Jr. puts his arm round her waist and dances 2 or 3 turns. Music softer.
One good turn deserves another.
Music louder. They dance again. They stop by the stairs. Music softer.
I shall remember my last night in England.
Last night in England? Then you are going abroad.
Yes, to Bombay.
Stop dancing. Dora stopping.
Bombay?
Going to him.
I wish you every success.
Thank you.
Shakes hands.
Goodbye.
Dora puts out her hand again.
Goodbye.
Jedbury Jr. impulsively kissing her extended hand.
Goodbye. God bless you.
Seizes coat, hat, and portmanteau and rushes off at window, right upper exit. Dora goes to window and looks after him.
He's going to Bombay. Strange. Uncle is going to Bombay also. It seems very selfish of me to let him go alone.
Looks at hand.
Poor uncle. He would be so lonely, so very lonely, without me.
She stands silently watching the door where Christopher departed. Music continues forte. Curtain. End of Act 2. Act 3 of Christopher Jr. by Madeleine Lucette Ryley. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Act 3. Time 6 months later. Scene Bombay. Interior of bungalow or private quarters of Major Headway. This scene is not minutely described, as it is capable of much original treatment. There should be rattan or wicker furniture, a piano, and a large screen. Writing desk near right center. Dora discovered at writing table left, finishing her letter.
There, Miss Nellie.
Leaning back and fanning herself.
It is warm. There's no denying it.
Taking up letter.
It strikes me there is a good deal of Mr. Blank in this letter. I'll read it. My dear Nellie, you may possibly remember Mr. Blank, the young secretary sent out by your father just before we came. He has become great friends with Uncle.
Looks up.
With Uncle.
Reads.
To whom he has confided an important discovery. There has been what he terms a leakage in the treasury, and it seems that your father's confidence in Mr. Simpson is entirely misplaced. For some strange reason, Mr. Blank declines to communicate with your father, and Uncle has such implicit faith in Mr. Blank's ability that he will not interfere. However, dear, I have not been bound to secrecy, and you may use my information as you see fit. So you are engaged. You forgot to mention the name of the happy man. I congratulate you. I shall never marry now.
Sighs and looks up.
I think I am safe in saying that.
Reads.
I told Mr. Blank so. That sounds suspicious. I'll scratch that out.
Scratches. Reads.
How is it you never mentioned Mr. Blank to me? He seems to be acquainted with your entire history.
Looks up.
I'll underline that.
Does so. Reads.
Yes, my coming to Bombay was rather a sudden resolution, but poor Uncle seemed so desolate.
Reads inaudibly.
Your sincere friend, Dora.
Folds letter and puts in envelope. Enter Mr. Simpson quietly from back left. He has a very sleek and deacon-like makeup. He approaches Dora unperceived after putting his hat and cane on chair near door. When downstage, she sees him and starts. Simpson, center.
I beg your pardon, Miss Headway, for coming in unannounced.
Dora, rising.
Do not mention it. You have business with Mr. Blank, I believe.
Going up left.
I will send word that you are here.
Simpson getting in her path.
The business with Mr. Blank can wait. It is not often I am fortunate enough to find you alone, that you need grudge me a few minutes of your society.
Dora, right center, nervously.
But your time...
Simpson, left center.
Is my own today. Our firm has a holiday.
Really? Mr. Blank never mentioned it.
Crosses to table left.
I am surprised. He is usually sufficiently communicative with regard to his employer's affairs.
Mr. Simpson, I must remind you that Mr. Blank is my uncle's guest.
I wish he were more worthy of the honor.
Dora turns.
Forgive me, Miss Dora. I would not offend you for the world.
Then in that case, you will please remember that I am Miss Headway, except to my friends.
And why may I not be numbered among your friends?
Because I reserve to myself the privilege of choosing them.
Calmly stamps her letter.
You are wise to limit your acquaintanceship. New confidences sometimes necessitate embarrassing revelations.
What do you mean?
Turns to him.
Nothing.
Aside.
A random shot, but it went home.
I beg you to excuse me, Mr. Simpson. My uncle—
Going. Simpson stopping her.
Is playing chess. Don't disturb him. He might be angry.
His anger is preferable to your—
To my civility. You don't mean that. In any case, I'm going to ask you to bear with it for 2 minutes.
Dora pauses.
I don't insist.
Points to chair right of table. Dora sits.
Miss Headway, you have refused me your friendship. I accept the decree with equanimity, for it suggests the possibility of a warmer feeling.
Dora looks up.
By and by.
Dora rises, points to seat.
You have given me 2 minutes, I think?
Dora sits.
Let me try to explain, and if I do not couch my sentiments in the phrases of a conventional suitor, make some allowance for my matter-of-fact training. I am a man of business, and my business instincts never deceive me. You have lately allowed your uncle to speculate with your money, with the result that you are no longer independent. The Major's pension will never be enough to support him in the style in which he lives, and his capital is invested in a business of which he knows nothing. He is at the mercy of commercial men who might bankrupt him tomorrow. A perilous outlook for you. Here is a safer one. A home in any part of the world you may choose, a private income, and the passionate devotion of a man who never thought of marriage till he saw you.
She looks at him.
When I intimate that your uncle's security rests with me, it is no idle boast. My position with our firm is such that I can build it or wreck it at my pleasure. I warned you that I was practical.
The warning was superfluous. I can only regret that you should have thought it necessary to reveal the state of your private affairs, for they can never be any concern of mine.
Then your answer is—
No. Now and for all time.
Enter Jedbury Jr. at back left. He walks down unobserved.
Perhaps you will reconsider.
I shall never reconsider. It is no. Emphatically no.
Simpson approaching her.
I may drive you to—
Jedbury Jr. coming between them, center, angrily.
No.
Changing tone.
Hang it all. The lady said no. Can't you take no for an answer?
I was not aware that you were invited to this discussion.
Jedbury Jr. looking at Dora.
I beg Miss Headway's pardon, but I happened in by chance and overheard you threatening to drive the lady. Now it's too abominably hot for a drive, so I consided with her and said no. Decidedly no.
There is a homely proverb about 2 being company and 3 none.
To be sure.
Offers Simpson his hat and cane.
Permit me.
Simpson turns away, and Jedbury Jr. puts hat and cane down at back center right. Simpson goes a little right.
You gentlemen have business together. I will leave you.
'Tis not yet time for our appointment. I have sent to the office for some papers.
Pending their arrival, my uncle will entertain you. He is on the veranda.
Pause.
On the veranda.
Simpson bows, takes hat and cane, and exits left center.
I think I did that very nicely.
Walks up, watches Simpson off, returns to Dora, who crosses left.
Miss Headway, has that man been annoying you?
Coming down center.
Yes. No, that is—
Won't you tell me the truth?
Dora, left of table.
The truth is, I have taken a great dislike to Mr. Simpson, and I am foolish enough to show it. That is all. Let us change the subject. Aren't you awfully warm?
Jedbury Jr., center, fanning himself with hat.
No, thanks. I am very comfortable.
With such a heavy coat.
It is the only one I could find. Job is an awful fellow to conceal one's wearing apparel.
Where is Job?
Gone for the mail, confound him.
Well, take that coat off.
May I?
Removes it.
Dear, dear, you poor helpless mortal. Look at the torn lining. I will stitch it for you if you will bring me that basket.
This one?
Referring to paper basket, fetches basket from table upright center. Dora spreads the coat out on her knee.
Find me a needle.
Jedbury Jr. hesitates at head of table.
Please?
That's better.
I am very cross today. I can't help it. It's the heat.
Jedbury Jr. giving needle.
I don't mind it.
What, the heat? Or my temper?
Either.
Breaks off very long thread. Dora takes thread, breaks a very small piece off, and throws the remainder away. Jedbury Jr. picks it up and winds it round his finger in an absent manner. Dora stitching.
Is there anything under the sun you do mind?
Jedbury Jr. idling with contents of work basket.
Only you. I mind you because I can't help myself.
I can't rid myself of the impression that you've grown somehow since you've been out here.
I have grown bald.
Nonsense.
Jedbury Jr. behind the table.
It is true. Look how thin my hair is on the top. It is worry.
What have you been worrying about?
About you. I thought you were going into a convent.
Dora stitching quickly.
You don't approve of a woman taking the veil?
Oh, yes, I do. But I think it ought to be a white veil with orange blossoms.
Dora giving him coat and rising hurriedly and crosses right.
It's very warm.
She crosses to right center and sits.
You said that before. It's an astonishing thing, but the weather becomes a topic of absorbing interest when we are alone.
Pause. They look at each other. Dora standing near screen.
Well?
Fanning herself. Jedbury Jr. fan business.
Well?
Dora impatiently.
Haven't you anything to say?
Yes. We are going to have rain.
Thank goodness. When?
I don't know when, but we'll have it some of these days.
How ridiculous. Oh, dear. It's very...
Yes, I know. It's a generally accepted fact that it's very warm.
How's business?
Leans against arm of chair right center.
Whose business?
Your business.
Oh, pretty well, thank you. Coffee's weak, nutmegs are rolling, peppers are strong, and cinnamon steady.
What about Mr. Simpson?
He's not so steady as the cinnamon. He's beginning to topple.
What did he say when you told him of your discovery?
Became indignant and threatened to kick me out, but he has changed his mind and has condescended to an explanation.
And who is going to dictate terms?
I am.
That is right.
Rises.
I once told you that I thought Arthurs were heedless and stupid. I withdraw the accusation.
Arthur. Oh, yes. Arthur, to be sure.
Don't say you have forgotten your own name.
No, I haven't forgotten it, but you see, I was never called Arthur much as a boy.
You have a very odd last name. Blank. I never knew anyone before of that name.
Crosses to table left and picks up letter.
Neither did I.
Dora crosses to table left, offering letter.
Will you have this posted for me?
With pleasure.
Takes it aside.
Where the deuce have I seen that writing? For the English mail, of course.
Looking at the writing.
Yes, it is for Miss Jedbury.
Crosses to right center.
How is Nellie? Bless her dear little heart.
Nellie? Bless her dear little heart. Really, you are very familiar, Mr. Blank.
I didn't mean to be.
Dora moving right, aside.
I see it all. He is in love with Nellie, and the father wouldn't hear of it.
Sits right.
Now I know what the stormy interview was about.
Aloud.
You know Miss Jedbury well.
Intimately.
You admire her.
Immensely.
You told her so?
Frequently.
That was very imprudent. What did Nellie say?
Say? Oh, she said she'd always be a sister to me.
She did? Then you haven't the ghost of a chance.
I know it.
And you are resigned?
Quite.
Dora, rising.
Mr. Blank. Arthur.
Yes, that's right. Call me Arthur.
I sympathize with you. You have acted bravely. It must have been an awful wrench.
Jedbury Jr. pretending to shudder.
It was. Yet I'd go through it all over again to have you sympathize with me.
But to return to Nellie...
No, don't return to Nellie. I'd rather stay here with you.
Dora shakes her finger.
When will you learn that I am just an elderly sort of person, to be treated seriously?
Never.
Then I shall not permit you to talk to me at all.
Don't be cruel. I'll call you Grandma if you say so.
You are incorrigible. But what was I going to say? Ah, it was about Nellie's brother, Christopher. You know him, I believe.
Yes. No. That is slightly.
Well, you have met him. How did he impress you?
Impress me? I thought him a good-looking sort of chap. Clever, upright. In fact, on the whole, a noble specimen of perfect manhood.
Striking attitude. Aside.
I consider that a most accurate description.
Goes left.
Then I don't agree with you. Between you and me, that young man is a very bad lot.
No. Then I'll never speak to him again.
I know it for a fact. He drinks.
No.
And he bets on races.
No.
Yes. I noticed it when I visited those rooms in London.
Major outside.
Dora! Dora! Where's Dora?
Dora rises.
My uncle, and I have not given orders for his tiffin.
Exit left. Jedbury Jr., right center.
A drunkard and a gambler. If the Major's voice hadn't cut short my profligate career, no knowing how I should have ended. I shall never dare to tell her who I am now. No, I am doomed to be a blank to the end of the chapter.
Enter Job from back left, coming down with letters and papers.
Ah, Job, you scoundrel. Any letters?
Extending his hand. Job, left center.
None for you, sir.
I am a fool to expect any.
Ain't my fault, Mr. Jedbury.
Jedbury Jr. turns quickly.
You call me Mr. Jedbury again, and you'll wish you died as an infant.
I beg pardon, sir. It's the first slip for months. It must have been old recollections brought about by this here.
Produces handbill.
There, sir. Cast your eyes over that.
An announcement.
Read it, sir.
Jedbury Jr., spreading out bill, reads,
Mr. and Mrs. Glib, the renowned philanthropists. Mrs. Glib. Can it possibly be my Mrs. Glib?
Voices heard off. Mrs. Glib, outside.
My dear Major, Mr. Glib's brain is positively colossal.
It is my Mrs. Glib, Job. If the Major inquires for me, I'm gone away for a month.
Goes towards left as Mr. Glib enters left slowly and stands at door with his hands behind him. Glib looks at Jedbury Jr., wheels suddenly round.
Cornered.
Job in a loud whisper.
Try the veranda, sir.
Jedbury Jr. goes to veranda, and Mrs. Glib and Major appear.
No good. Retreat cut off.
My advice is, rush it, sir. I'll make a clearing. Follow me.
Job poses in pedestrian fashion and then makes a rush for the door at which Mr. Glib is looking in. He strikes with force against him, which causes Glib to wheel round. Jedbury Jr. bolts out after Job, and Glib, who is thoroughly bewildered, stands staring after them as Major and Mrs. Glib enter from veranda. Glib then drops down behind chair left.
And the first lecture, Major. How many tickets may I put you down for?
Writes in notebook. Major, aside.
Oh, for 20 minutes sleep.
Aloud.
We'll say 3. Just 20 minutes?
Sits right of table.
3 and 20. Thank you, Major. You military gentlemen are always to be relied upon for generosity in a noble cause.
To Glib, who has taken up his position behind Major.
George?
Major, aside.
I felt there was something there.
Moves to the other chair, extreme left.
Tell the Major about my treacherous memory.
Mr. Glib prepares to speak.
Mr. Glib is quite right. I had positively forgotten our acquaintance till he reminded me that Major Headway would doubtless prove our great support.
Enter Dora, center.
Ah, your charming niece. George, do you remember Miss Headway?
Glib bows and gradually moves until he gets behind the Major again.
This is a very pleasant surprise.
You are too good.
Not at all. We are so awfully dull here that any change is welcome. That is,
Eyes front, Dora, my darling.
It's getting delightfully cool on the veranda, and I think we can offer you a sherbet.
Goes to back and calls.
Job, please have these chairs taken out for us.
Enter Job. Mrs. Glib, seeing him.
Good gracious! This is surely a familiar face.
Job starts and tries to get away.
It is... Why, Job, what are you doing out here?
Job is waiting on a guest of ours.
What? You have forsaken Mr. Christopher?
Job shakes his head, then nods violently.
Mr. Christopher?
Young Mr. Jedbury, Job's former employer.
To Job.
What has become of that naughty boy?
Job looks bewildered and presently casts his eyes up and produces his handkerchief.
Dead? Is it possible?
Mr. Glib turns and looks at door.
Nellie's brother? Dead?
What did he die of?
Job hesitates, then slowly raises his hand to his mouth to signify that Jedbury Jr. died of drink.
That teapot!
Oh, how shocking!
Poor Nellie.
Oh, George, let it be a warning to you.
Major sees Glib behind him and changes back into other chair. Glib moves with him and stations himself behind him again. Job takes chair up. Jedbury Jr. enters at back unperceived, except by Job, who rushes to him.
Go away, sir. You're dead.
Dead, am I? Then I'll go and bury myself.
Exit left, back, followed by Job with chair.
Christopher dead? I cannot realize it.
Major, after glancing behind him and rising, offering his arm to Mrs. Glib.
A false sentiment to lament death. We all die, every man jack of us, and Major Headway will endeavour to go with his boots on.
Aside to Dora.
Bring along the gay Lothario, Dora.
Strolls off center with Mrs. Glib left.
Mr. Glib, come along. It's all right. I shan't hurt you.
Glib hesitates, then follows her off. Job re-enters back. Jedbury Jr. looking in at door left.
Psst! Job!
It's all right, sir. They're gone.
Then see they don't come back till I've found my tobacco. I refuse to go to the tomb without my pipe.
Looking for pipe.
What did I die of, Job?
Drink.
Eh?
I couldn't help it, sir. You'd got to be killed somehow.
Job, you are a conscientious, good-for-nothing scoundrel. Get out.
Job, exit center left with second chair.
Where the deuce is that pipe? Ah, here it is. Must have removed it from my pocket when Dora mended my coat. Dora. I always call her Dora when there's no one to hear me. I wonder how Bellaby's investigations are proceeding. He says if I will only wait 7 years, I shall be free anyhow. 4 years more. How would he like it himself?
Finds cross attached to chain on desk, right center.
Her locket must have fallen from her neck. I wonder if I might keep it.
Pockets it.
I have become a perfect kleptomaniac where anything belonging to Dora is concerned.
Enter Dora, center.
I must have dropped it somewhere. Oh, have you found a gold locket with a monogram?
No, but I'll look for it.
Suddenly kneels and looks on floor.
Ah, here it is.
Takes it from pocket and pretends to have found it. Offers cross but retains hold of chain.
Oh, thank you. Its intrinsic value is nothing, but it was my poor father's last present. He bought it in Trinidad.
Jedbury Jr., dropping chain.
Trinidad?
Kneeling left center.
Yes. Have you ever been there?
Oh, yes. I've been there. Once.
Once. Then I suppose you don't remember much about it.
On the contrary, my remembrance of Trinidad is most distinct.
So is mine.
Sighs.
It holds the most painful recollections for me. Won't you get up?
Jedbury Jr., catching hold of cross. She has the chain.
No thanks, I am very comfortable, and it makes you look so tall. Away up in the skies where you belong.
Dora, smiling.
You seem to have taken quite a fancy to my locket.
Yes, I'm trying to read Dora.
Dora looks.
In this monogram.
Oh, that isn't meant for Dora at all. Dora is really my second name. The first is so hideous that I discarded it when I assumed the other.
Assumed? What other?
Headway. I have never told anyone my secret. The fact is that I have there is something.
Yes? You have a...
In the past.
The past. Oh, bother the past. Think of the future. Your future. My future, Dora. Forgive me, dear. I can't keep it any longer. I've something to tell you. Something that...
Dora, shrinking away.
No, you'd better not. Not now. I don't know. I must take time to consider.
Certainly. Take 7 years.
Eh?
I mean 4. You see, it's better not to hurry these things, and...
Enter Simpson, left center. Dora, turning.
Mr. Simpson.
Dora drops Jedbury Jr.'s hand and exits left, leaving Jedbury Jr. on his knees, somewhat embarrassed by Simpson's entrance. Jedbury Jr. aside.
A bad beginning for me, but we must see if the positions cannot be reversed before the interview is closed.
Rises, calmly points to chair by table.
Sit down, Mr. Simpson. I have given orders that we are not to be disturbed.
Simpson, crossing to left, referring to the position in which he found Jedbury Jr.
Didn't you take that precaution a little late?
Better late than never.
Draws chair center and sits. Simpson, smiling.
Charming young lady, Miss Headway.
Sits left.
Though a little free in her manners, I should imagine.
I wouldn't let my imagination run too far if I were you.
I never do. I may be keen at grasping a situation, but I don't deduce anything from it unless I am driven to do so by circumstances.
A safe plan.
Simpson, taking cigar from case.
Does your fair hostess permit?
Yes.
Simpson, offering case.
Will you join me?
No, I prefer my pipe.
Lights pipe. Simpson sitting right of table.
A less expensive habit. I always smoked a pipe when I was a clerk, although I now confess I don't like the flavor.
That's a pity.
Why?
You might have to go back to the pipe.
Possibilities are limitless. You might suddenly develop a taste for expensive cigars.
Very likely. But I shall also endeavour to develop the means of paying for them honestly.
Of course, of course. Honesty is always the best policy, and in spite of our little misunderstanding, I have never doubted yours.
Thanks.
Now, with your permission, we will revert to the subject of your late...
detection.
You use very extravagant expressions, but we won't argue about that.
No, don't let us argue.
Simpson rising and walking uneasily.
You were sent out to me some 6 months ago, with no special recommendation beyond a good education. It was not mercantile, however, and gave you no advantage over the other clerks. I thought I saw in you an intelligent man, and I at once started to bring out whatever germs of business talent you might possess.
That was your first mistake.
Observing a taste for mathematics, I placed you in the bookkeeping department.
That was your second mistake.
And finally, believing that you were to be trusted, I gave you access to my own private books.
That was your third and most serious mistake.
Go on. I am curious to see how far ingratitude can go.
Sits at left.
Are you? Then listen to me.
Puffing his pipe.
15 years ago, I am told, Mr. Jedbury took into his service a young man, who, not having the drawback of a classical education, plodded on, with the help of his trusting employer, until he obtained sufficient knowledge to fill the important position of manager in the Bombay House.
Narratives do not interest me.
Really? I thought you were curious as to ingratitude.
Simpson, assuming ease.
Your assurance is simply amusing.
Amusing. Wait a bit. I haven't begun to be funny yet.
Takes a paper from pocket.
You appear anxious for the denouement, so I'll skip details. A few weeks ago, I suggested we should review the last few years' balance sheet, so as to compare with accuracy the annual profits. You agreed. Finding a slight discrepancy in last year's accounts, I looked up the duplicate books which I knew to be in your possession.
Simpson rising.
You had no right to touch them in my absence.
You shouldn't have taken a holiday.
Simpson sits impatiently.
Well, sir, you found the books.
Yes, but they were not duplicates, except in the matter of binding. The totals were distinctly at variance.
You lie.
Shh! Don't raise your voice. The Major's gone to sleep. Pardon me, did I understand you to say that I lied? Quite a mistake. I assure you I speak by the card.
Producing paper.
Let me begin with the credit total for last year. The firm's ledger says £16,422. Your private ledger for the same, 18,000 and...
It is false.
Yes, I know it is. That is what I am getting at. I repeat that your private ledger gives last year's profit at 18,000.
Nothing of the sort. That is the 92 return.
Ah, thank you. I wanted to find out how long you had been working this little game.
It is an evidence of your business inexperience that you haven't allowed for my commissions.
Commissions? But how about that extra annual 200 noted as the equivalent for commissions?
Simpson angrily rises.
I am not here for cross-examination. With an audacity that only ignorance can excuse, you imply my dishonesty.
Oh, no, I don't imply. I assert. Mr. Simpson, I charge you with being a thief. Now.
Standing erect.
Answer it like a man.
Simpson starts as if he would attack him, then turns away smiling.
And you think you will be able to prove your statement?
Well, I'm green in the business, as you say, but I have a document here which would ripen the intelligence of a June Pippin.
Produces letter.
A letter to me from the firm?
No, not the letter, but a forged copy of it.
Forgery. You are becoming indiscreet.
Oh, no, I am all right.
Unfolding letter.
Now, Mr. Simpson, the original letter from Mr. Jedbury authorizes you to purchase a certain quantity of ivory, if obtainable, at 5,000. This, the copy you made to show to the Rajah, says 3,500. Managing man's profit.
Pointing to Simpson.
1,500. Barring this little discrepancy, the letters are identical. Both the original and this are signed Christopher Jedbury.
What did you expect to prove by that?
Nothing until I secured your receipt from the Rajah. Here it is.
Shows paper.
You have sent the bogus one to London. Well, I am waiting.
Waiting?
Yes, I have stated the case. The question is, what is going to be done about it? Now go ahead and let me have your proposition.
Simpson, aside.
Proposition? He wants a share. Ah.
Aloud.
It is a pity that in making what you term your discovery, you should have assumed so hostile a manner. It might have led to serious results. In fact, my first impulse was to discharge you, as you know I have full power to do. But on second thoughts...
Ah, second thoughts are best.
Sits right center. Simpson sits left center.
I say, on second thoughts, I felt I should be injuring the firm by robbing them of a really bright young man, merely to gratify a personal spite. Therefore I am content to let bygones be bygones, and moreover to admit you into a sort of private partnership, first assuring you that the trifling irregularities you have remarked are strictly in the way of legitimate business. This is my proposition. What do you say to it?
Say to it? Oh dear, oh dear. Have you any idea what an infernal rogue you are?
Rises.
Now you go home at once and send in your resignation, or in 24 hours I will communicate with Mr. Jedbury myself.
Simpson, rising.
Then you mean to fight, do you?
I do.
You little know your employer if you think that your accusations can weigh against my 15 years of hard service. My word will stand before yours.
Jedbury Jr., aside.
I'm afraid it will.
I can discharge you this instant, and give any reason I choose to manufacture. Today I will make you the talk of Bombay, and tomorrow have you hounded from the town.
Jedbury Jr., aside, quickly.
What shall I do? Sink with the ship? No, I'll keep it floating. There's only one way, and here goes.
Aloud.
So you think that you can appeal to your employer? Well, what if your employer has already suspected you? What if he sent 6 months ago a spy to report to him as to the truth of his suspicions?
Simpson starts.
Are you still as blind as you were when that spy arrived? The young clerk calling himself Arthur Blank, who now discharges you in his real name and in the name of the firm. I am Christopher Jedbury, Jr., son of your employer.
Points, center.
Now go.
A lie.
Curtain. End of Act 3. Act 4 of Christopher Jr. by Madeleine Lucette Ryley. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. 6 weeks later. Scene, same as Act 3, with slightly different arrangement of furniture. Screen near piano. Small table left center. Dora at desk.
What is the matter with me today? I have a fearful attack of blues. Well, the prospect is not cheering. And yet it is no worse than it has been for the last 3 years.
Takes paper from desk. Scans it.
Yes, 3 years.
Looking up.
My marriage contract. I wonder if I could find you, Mr.
Looks at paper.
Bellaby.
Looks up.
But I don't want to find you. That's the trouble. I have a good mind to confide in Uncle.
Shakes her head.
No, dear old Uncle. He would only want to kill somebody. And think of the talk. The scandal. No.
Puts paper away and closes desk.
Better let it alone.
Goes to piano, sits and strikes a few chords. Enter Jedbury Jr., center. He goes to chair, back of screen.
I wonder if I shall get a letter from Tom Bellaby today. I can't bear the suspense any longer.
Dora to herself.
I may as well be candid with myself and own up what is the matter. It is Christopher.
Jedbury Jr., hearing his name.
Eh?
Listens, peers round the screen and gives a satisfied sigh.
I dreamed of him last night. I thought he was ill, wounded, and I was nursing him. I was bandaging his forehead, and we were so happy. At least I was. I wish the dream would come true.
Music.
It is so delightful to minister to those we love.
That settles it.
Produces handkerchief, folds it bandage fashion, and binds it on his head.
But Christopher is so wretchedly healthy.
She drums on the piano.
Strong as a lion. He'll die of old age.
If I have my choice, he will.
Old age. Dreadful thought.
Plays and sings.
Falling leaf and fading tree, lines of white in a sullen sea, shadows rising on you and me, shadows rising on you and me. The swallows are making them ready to fly, wheeling out on a windy sky. Goodbye, summer, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye to hope, goodbye, goodbye.
When she commences, Jedbury Jr. peeps over screen and listens. At the last goodbye, she stops with a crash and falls crying on the piano. Jedbury Jr. comes from behind the screen, pulling her hands from before her face.
Now don't, dear, please don't. Dora.
She looks up quickly.
I mean, Auntie, don't now. There's a dear girl. I mean, there's a good old person.
Dora, jumping up.
Don't what? Why, I was just enjoying a good old laugh.
What was the joke?
She continues to force a laugh, he also affecting to laugh.
Awfully funny, to be sure.
Dora, catching sight of the bandage.
Good gracious, what's the matter?
Which? Where?
Dora points to his head.
Oh, nothing much. I've had a slight accident, that's all.
Dora, aside.
Extraordinary. My dream.
Crosses to him.
Does it hurt you much?
Touches bandage.
Ouch. Yes, but I will try and bear it.
You are faint.
Am I?
She takes him to chair, left center.
Stay here. I will fetch you some smelling salts, poor fellow.
She goes to door behind screen. He is about to follow.
No, sit still. I won't be a moment.
Exit at door right. Jedbury Jr. pushing up the bandage so that it rests turban fashion on his head.
No thanks, no smelling salts. I think I'll go.
As he starts up center, Voices are heard off.
By Jove, I know that voice.
He peeps off, then rushes behind screen as Mr. and Mrs. Jedberry and Nellie enter center. They are followed by Whimper.
We are all right, Mama. I have sent our cards to Major Headway.
Remains up, looking off left center. Jedberry Jr. behind screen.
My entire family, by all that's unexpected. How am I to escape?
Mrs. Jedberry, right center.
Whimper?
Whimper, center.
Yes, Mum?
My compliments to your master, and I think it would have been more polite to have written the Major that we were coming.
Jedberry Sr., left center.
Whimper.
Whimper, without moving.
Yes, sir.
When I require any advice from your mistress, I will ask for it.
Whimper, turning his head to Mrs. Jedberry and giving the least cough.
Mr. Jedberry thanks you for the suggestion, Mum, but thinks the present manner of announcement will be satisfactory.
Jedberry Jr. lifts the screen and carries it in front of him, backing till he reaches door right. He then drops screen noiselessly and exits door right. He should not make any noise with screen. Jedberry Sr., who has seen the screen move.
Bless my soul.
Nellie, coming down slightly.
What is the matter, Papa?
Mrs. Jedberry, pointing to Jedberry Sr.
Whimper, sunstroke.
Whimper steps forward.
Whimper, mind your own business.
Nellie, right center, soothing her father.
I am just dying to see Christopher. I am sure, Papa, that you never thought he would have acted with so much discretion.
When I am at fault, Nellie, I have the justice to acknowledge it.
Nellie goes up and looks off left center again.
Whimper, you can remind your master that I knew he was in fault all along.
Enter Dora hurriedly with smelling salts.
Good gracious! Mr. and Mrs. Jedberry, how do you do?
Shaking hands.
Have you seen Christopher?
Not yet. We have this moment arrived. My dear young lady, we can never thank you enough for the information your letters contained.
Nellie, coming down on tiptoe from right center and clasping her hands over Dora's eyes.
It is Nellie! This is a surprise. But where is your brother? I left him here not 5 minutes ago. He is ill. I am afraid that is...
My son ill? Oh, retribution! Whimper, tell your master it is a judgment upon him.
Jedberry Sr. down left.
Whimper, if your mistress insists on making a fool of herself, let her go outside and do it.
Whimper, without moving.
Mr. Jedberry suggests that you might take a stroll on the veranda, Mum.
Enter Job, left. Job, up center to Mr. and Mrs. Jedberry.
Major Headway's compliments, sir. And will you have the goodness to step this way?
Mrs. Jedberry turns up and exits at back, followed by Whimper. Jedberry Sr. pausing at exit, looking at Job.
Dear me, we have surely met before.
Yes, sir. In London. I'm Job, sir. Job Smith.
Mr. Smith, of course. Christopher's friend. Very glad to renew your acquaintance.
He shakes hands violently and further embarrasses Job as they exeunt left back.
They are gone. Now we can have a nice long chat.
Nellie sits on stool center, Dora on chair right of table.
Isn't it delightful that Papa and Christopher are going to be friends again? And it's all your doing.
Mine?
Of course. I showed Papa your letters, and he determined to come and investigate. Then I wanted to see you so much that I teased him until he agreed to make it a family party. Dear old Chris, he was too proud to write. Didn't he keep his secret well? I longed to tell you who Mr. Blank really was, but I didn't dare. And what has made you change your mind about the convent?
Well, dear, Uncle didn't approve of it. But Nellie, you have not said a word about your fiancé.
No, I am saving him till the last. Oh, I'm so happy, Dora. And he is with us, you know.
What?
Yes, it was his vacation, and I wouldn't let Papa rest till he had invited him to come.
Rising and taking her hand.
Come and let me introduce you. He thinks he remembers catching just a glimpse of you at my birthday ball. Do you remember him?
Dora goes to door right center.
How do I know when you have never mentioned his name?
Haven't I?
No. You always say he, as if there were only one man in the world.
Oh, well, you shall see him.
Going to door, calls.
Tom!
Dora, aside.
Tom. How I hate that name.
Crosses to right center. Enter Bellaby. Nellie brings him down left.
Tom, this is my dearest friend Dora. Miss Headway. Dora, this is Tom. Mr. Bellaby.
Bellaby? Mr. Tom Bellaby?
Bellaby, not noticing her agitation.
Delighted to meet you. Nellie has talked so much of you.
Dora, aside.
It must be the same.
Why, Dora, what's the matter?
Nothing. I've had so much excitement this morning.
I want you two to be very good friends.
I shall be delighted if Miss Headway will permit me.
Offers his hand. Dora, aside, ignoring his hand.
We shall either be excellent friends or excellent enemies.
Crosses to left. Bellaby, aside.
What can she mean?
Nellie to Dora.
He is so clever, such a lawyer. He has won every case he has had so far.
Rather, I think I have.
A lawyer? Oh, then, Nellie, I want to consult him. Can I not see him a few minutes alone?
Nellie, in amazement.
Alone? Dora?
Yes, it is something very important. Something which your happiness is connected, dearest. Let me see him for 5 minutes, and then I will send him after you.
Tom?
Yes, Nellie?
Crosses center.
Miss Headway wishes to consult you on legal business.
Bellaby crosses right, aside.
Another case. My second. I haven't had one since that affair of Christopher's.
Dora rises and crosses up center with Nellie.
I don't often leave Tom, dear.
Going.
A girl can't see too much of the man she's going to marry.
Exits center.
No, she can't.
To him.
Mr. Bellaby, you are probably surprised at my seeking a private interview on so short an acquaintance.
Not at all, Miss Headway. It's a matter of daily occurrence in our profession.
Dora coming down right center.
Indeed.
We lawyers are used to receiving all sorts of confidences.
But this is a case in which you will be expected to give confidence.
Really?
You are engaged to be married to my friend, Miss Jedbury.
I have that honor.
But are you sure you're not married already? Now be careful how you answer.
Married already? No. We shall not be married till the autumn. What would be the use of a secret marriage?
Then you do not approve of secret marriages?
He looks amazed.
Or irregular marriages? Or marriages at all out of the ordinary line?
Certainly not.
Then your first wife is not living? Now be careful how you answer.
Bellaby taking it as a joke.
My first wife? Well, not if I know it.
Ah, I see. You don't know.
My experience is, that if a man's wife is alive, she generally lets him know it.
You confess, then, that you have been married before.
I have no recollection of such an event.
Your name is Bellaby. You are sure of that.
I will take my affidavit.
And your Christian name is... Do I clearly understand that your Christian name is...
Making an effort to pronounce it, fails. Bellaby taking card from case.
Tom Bellaby. Rather an unusual name. Tom Bellaby. The only one in the London directory.
Dora taking card and looking at it.
The same name. The same address that he gave before.
Shows great emotion and drops in chair left of screen. Bellaby aside.
What is the matter with her?
To Dora.
Shall I get you anything? A glass of water? Smelling salts?
Nothing. Nothing.
Rises and crosses a little up center, then down.
And you, sir, can calmly lead that innocent girl to the altar, knowing, as a lawyer, you must know that you are married to another.
Another? What do you mean?
Do you happen to remember your visit to Trinidad?
Trinidad?
Ah, you do remember Trinidad.
I've seen it on the map.
Perhaps you remember signing a contract which married you to a young girl, Matilda Dwyer?
Matilda Dwyer?
Beginning to take in the situation.
Oh, Christopher.
You do recall it. I am Matilda Dwyer.
Good gracious.
Aside.
What was the name that Christopher used? Ah, I remember. It was Glib.
Aloud.
You are Matilda Dwyer, are you? Then you are confusing me with someone else. Your name is Glib.
Approaching her.
Glib? What do you mean, sir? Don't touch me.
Backs a little to right center.
I had no intention of touching Miss Dwyer.
My name is Headway.
Just now you said it was Dwyer. Now, be careful how you answer.
So it was. Matilda Dora Dwyer.
Then, how are you, Miss Headway?
When my father died, I assumed my uncle's name. It enabled me to conceal my identity from you.
Crosses left.
Why didn't you continue to conceal your identity?
Because I found that you were to become the husband of my dear friend Nellie. She knows nothing. Poor girl. Absolutely nothing.
I beg your pardon. Nellie is a very well-informed young lady.
Dora taking paper from desk, right center.
She'll be a better informed young lady presently. I'll show her this marriage contract.
Bellaby crossing to right center, taking paper and looking at it. Aside.
My name in Chris's handwriting. So I'm the friend whose card he gave, and whose name he borrowed, not Glib. I'd like to pay him out for this.
Dora, left center, taking document again.
Well, sir?
Miss Headway, I was never in Trinidad. I never signed that document. The man who did sign it assured me that the name was Glib.
Glib?
Sinks into chair left of table. Enter Glib center, as though looking for something. He takes no notice of the others, but looks over things on table, etc. After Glib walks down slowly, Dora rises and goes left center. She continues aside to Bellaby.
And do you mean to tell me that the person who falsely signed your name to that paper is that harmless man who is never known to speak a word against a human being in his life?
But he wrote this. I merely repeat what I was told.
What is he looking for?
Perhaps he is looking for his tongue.
Dora goes to Mr. Glib, takes him by the hand, and pulls him down center. He is frightened.
Tell me the truth, I implore you, if you have never told it in your life before.
He exhibits great astonishment.
Were you in Trinidad?
Glib gazes at her in amazement and tries to get free, and walks rapidly and then runs, she after him, round the room at back, then to left, then exit Glib rapidly left, frightened to death. Dora leans against door. Bellaby, who has been laughing, right center.
Miss Headway, let me set you right. The person who signed that document using my name instead of his own was not Glib, but Christopher Jedbury.
Christopher Jedbury!
He told me that he used the name of Glib, but this document proves that he used mine.
Christopher Jedbury? Christopher Jedbury, you say? Christopher Jedbury is my husband?
Rises.
Has he any suspicion that I am his wife?
Not the least in the world.
Dora, as if a sudden fear had seized her, crosses center quickly.
Is it the old man or the young?
Jedbury Jr.
She gives a sigh of relief. He smiles. Dora, aside.
The darling. The wretch. He deserves to be punished.
Aloud.
Promise me you will not tell him you have made this discovery.
I promise you.
Jedbury's voice heard.
But look.
Pointing out back.
He's coming. You can tell him yourself.
No, not just yet.
Aside, crosses right.
He would read the joy in my face.
Aside to Bellaby.
You won't tell him, will you? I am coming back in a minute, presently.
Aside.
I must have a moment to think. All alone. Oh, Mr. Bellaby.
Exit, door right. Enter Jedbury Jr. from veranda, coming down center indifferently.
Hello, old man. How are you?
Well, of all the cool customers, you are the most frigid.
They shake hands.
Nothing of the sort. I've never registered less than 80 since I landed in this balmy climate. Don't say a word till I get it off my mind. I am head and ears in love. Phew. That's done.
Sits left center.
Chris, old man, I'm with you.
But why haven't you written me all these months? Have you found her? Is she dead or alive?
She? Who?
There's only one she. Matilda, of course.
Oh, Matilda? She's dead. Died of delirium tremens in the Sandwich Islands. Particulars in my trunk. Sorry for you, old man. Awfully sorry for you.
Runs out by veranda left.
Matilda dead, and he's sorry for me.
Claps his hands wildly.
Dead? Oh, I'm the happiest man on earth.
Dances.
Matilda.
Blowing a kiss to the ceiling.
I wish you the compliments of this season. I hope you have a happy future before you. Oh, Matilda, Matilda.
Capers about right with chair. Dora enters left.
Really, Mr. Jedbury, your conduct is extraordinary.
Aside.
I've borrowed some of my uncle's discipline.
Goes center.
Wait, Dora. I may call you Dora this once. I'm so happy. She's dead.
Dances.
It's my natural state of mind. I'm celebrating the arrival of my family.
You appear to be very fond of your family.
Aside.
I am doing beautifully.
Oh, Dora, I may call you Dora just this once. It isn't that. My troubles are all over. I've buried them.
Buried them?
Yes, they died of delirium tremens in the Sandwich Islands.
What on earth are you talking about?
Oh, Dora, I may call you Dora this once. If I tell you, you will hate me.
No, I won't. I couldn't.
Aside, pulling herself together.
Discipline.
Sit down, then.
Places chair. Dora sitting right by piano.
I'm glad Nellie has come. You need someone near you.
Jedbury Jr. putting his chair nearer.
Yes.
Dora withdrawing hers a little.
A sister.
Well, not precisely a sister, don't you know?
Then perhaps a maiden aunt might do.
Say a maiden without the aunt.
We won't be particular about the relationship.
Excuse me, I know you'll excuse me. We will be particular about the relationship. I've got all the female relations I want, excepting one.
And that is?
A wife.
Rises, sits on piano. Dora, pretending to misunderstand.
I see. You haven't been able to persuade any woman to accept you.
Sits on piano.
Oh, Dora, I may call you Dora just this once. Let me explain. Now, you think I'm a bad fellow, dissipated and...
Think? Oh, no, I don't think.
You mean that you know it?
Turns away, offended. Dora stretches out her hands affectionately behind his back. He turns suddenly, and to her confusion, seizes her hands.
I accept your apology. Dora, let me call you Dora this once. Please be friends with me, for I am not a drunkard nor a gambler, and... Oh, Dora, I've been in love with you ever since I first saw you, and the only reason I never told you before was because... Because I was married already.
Mr. Jedbury!
Aside.
Poor fellow.
But she's dead, Dora. She's dead.
Dora, puzzled.
Dead?
Yes, she died of sandwiches in delirium tremens. I don't know what she died of, but I do know that she's defunct. Gone to a better world.
How do you know that she is defunct?
Bellaby told me so.
Bellaby told you so?
Oh, yes, he's in my confidence. Capital fellow.
Taking her hand.
But, Dora, don't keep me in suspense.
I won't.
Suddenly remembering herself.
Unhand me, sir.
Jedbury Jr. releasing her.
There, Dora, now you are unhanded.
How dared you make love to me while you were a married man? Why didn't you go to your wife?
I shouldn't have known where to find her.
Why didn't you look for her?
What was the use? I shouldn't have known her.
Ah, your cruelty effected a change in her appearance.
Very likely. That is, I don't know.
Aside.
How the deuce can I say that I never saw her? She wouldn't believe me.
So you deserted her.
Oh, no, I didn't desert her. That is, we got separated before we were married, you know.
You mean that she deserted you?
Jedbury Jr. jumping at the solution.
Exactly. No, that isn't it. The fact is we deserted each other. You see, she couldn't help it. She was forced into the match by a crazy old father.
Dora, aside.
That's right. But I must punish him a little more.
Aloud.
Mr. Jedbury, did I ever give you the slightest encouragement?
No, Dora.
Miss Headway, if you please.
Yes, Miss Headway. No, Miss Headway.
Gulps down the word.
Didn't it ever occur to you that I had the best reason in the world for not doing so?
Yes, Miss Dorway. No, Miss Headway.
Gulps, as before.
Then I will tell you that I am married already.
Married? Married to whom?
To your friend, Mr. Bellaby. Mr. Tom Bellaby.
Bellaby? Bellaby?
Staggers, overcome, leans against table.
Chris?
Catches him by the wrist.
Unhand me, madame.
Dora, aside, laughing.
Poor fellow.
Aloud, imitating his manner.
Now you are unhanded.
Jedbury Jr. recovering.
Married to Bellaby?
To Mr. Tom Bellaby.
And yet the earth revolves on its axis. To Bellaby, I think you said.
Yes.
When?
That is my business.
Where?
That is his business.
How?
That is our business. If you don't believe it, ask Mr. Bellaby.
Ask him? I'll exterminate him.
Very well. Let me know when you get finished. In the meantime, I wish you good morning.
Exit right upper entrance. Enter Bellaby by veranda, center left. Bellaby coming down center, aside.
Now to get even with him.
Aloud.
Where's Nellie? I can't find her.
Scoundrel.
What's the matter?
How dare you ask where's Nellie? I have just had a conversation with your wife.
My wife? Oh.
A light breaks in upon him. He laughs heartily. Jedbury Jr. aside.
And he can laugh. Well, sir, I can laugh as well as you. Ha, 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 ha.
So she told you herself, did she?
Laying his hand familiarly on his shoulder, Jedbury Jr. removing the hand with exaggerated dignity.
She did. Why couldn't you have acted as a man and told me months ago?
Tell you months ago? How could I? I didn't know it.
Didn't know it? Why, you unblushing hypocrite, how could you be married without knowing it? Don't attempt to lie out of it. Of course you depended on my not finding it out. She told me herself that you were her husband.
She did she? Well, I am her husband, and that's all there is about it.
And this wretch can talk in this calm way about it. Are your senses taking leave of you, or are mine?
Yours, dear boy, yours. Try to be calm and cool while I tell you that your sister Nellie and I...
You villain, don't you presume to mention my sister Nellie again in the same breath with yourself.
Bellaby, pretending to get angry.
I had intended to tell you all about your wife. I thought you'd perhaps like to know where she is.
Where she is? You told me she was dead. How can I know where she is?
Yes, I didn't like to tell you all at once. But since you're making a fool of yourself, all because of a little peccadillo of mine...
Peccadillo? Great heaven! Here's a man married to one woman, making love to another, and he calls that a peccadillo.
Aren't you married to one woman, and, haven't you been making love to another?
That's a very different affair.
You're married to Matilda Dwyer, and you've been making love to... to my wife, confound you!
But you just told me my wife was dead. That she died of tremendous sandwiches in the Delirium Islands.
Ah, that was only my little joke. I've bad news for you. Your wife is alive.
Alive? Matilda alive? Oh, my brain is spinning.
Yes, Matilda's alive. And what's worse, she's in this very house.
Where?
Bellaby, trying to conceal his laughter.
Find out. If you treated me decently, I might have helped you. But instead of that, I am a scoundrel. Where is she? Find out. And if you dare to make love to my wife again...
Shakes his fist in Jedbury Jr.'s face and goes up center. Jedbury Jr. following him up.
And if you dare to make love to my sister...
Follows him up to veranda. Exit Bellaby left center. Jedbury Jr. remains up, looking after him. Jedbury Sr. and Major enter door left.
Your kindness to my son shall never be forgotten.
Sure, it's entirely mutual.
Goes up right slightly. Jedbury Sr., seeing Christopher.
Christopher, my son, I've taken a long journey to ask your forgiveness.
Enter Mrs. Jedbury. Jedbury Jr. coming down, extending hand.
Don't speak of it, Dad.
Major goes up right.
My son, dear boy.
What, Mother?
Whimper. No, hang it, I don't want him.
Crosses to her.
Margaret, I've been an old fool.
Christopher, you have...
Enter Bellaby, Nellie, and Mrs. Glib. They are followed by Mr. Glib. They are all listening to Bellaby, who is telling them about his discovery. Bellaby and Nellie go right. Mrs. Glib and Mrs. Jedbury remain together left center. Glib, slowly and deliberated.
Hooray!
Coming center, all start.
George, you chatterbox!
What's the row?
Bellaby approaching him right center.
I have some news.
No? Am I free?
Enter Dora center.
On the contrary, you are bound and fettered for life.
Takes Dora by the hand and brings her to Jedbury Jr. center.
To Matilda, Dora, Dwyer.
Returns to Nellie.
What? You are not.
Yes, I am.
But Bellaby says...
That his name is on my marriage contract. So it is.
Jedbury Jr. remembering.
What an idiot I am. Forgive me, Tom, for borrowing your name. I was driven to it.
Then this is the lady you married?
Hush. The Major doesn't know.
Major coming down.
Indeed? And what is it the Major doesn't know?
That I have the honour to...
To be making love to my niece? The sleeping partner has had a wakeful eye on you for some time.
Then you consent?
Yes, with all my heart.
Beckoning Jedbury Sr. upstage where they join. Jedbury Jr. aside to Dora.
You won't mind going through it again?
No, but this time I shall endeavor to be present at my own wedding.
Jedbury Sr. to Major upstage.
I think we had better give him control of the Bombay house, Major.
Major beckons to Jedbury Sr. and to Mrs. Jedbury and Mrs. Glib. They nod and go off left center. Nellie sees the Major's maneuvers and pulls Bellaby's sleeve. He looks at Dora and Jedbury Jr. and then goes off with Nellie, the same as the others have done. Glib is now standing alone up left, gazing at nothing. The Major motions him. He pays no attention. Then the Major leads him to exit. Glib is about to drop behind when the Major seizes his arm, thrusts him off, and follows himself. This is all done quietly but quickly, while Dora and Jedbury Jr. are talking inaudibly. Jedbury Jr., who hasn't seen the maneuvers, looks at the floor.
Father, you make me feel very proud. I should say that... What I mean is...
Dora pulls him by the sleeve. He looks round, sees that they are all gone.
He doesn't seem to be here.
Nervously.
He is a decent sort of chap after all.
Dora, nervously.
Yes, they none of them seem to be here.
Yes, they are all decent sort of chaps. Dora, I may say Dora this once.
Chris.
They rush into each other's arms as curtain falls. Curtain. End of Act 4. End of Christopher Jr. by Madeleine Lucette Ryley.